The Avengers are a long-standing Marvel team that have been around since 1963, but while the team has been around for decades, their roster has not always stayed the same. In recent years, we've seen tons of interesting and exciting changes to the lineup, with lots of powerful characters being welcomed on board. Let's check out some as we count down the top 10 most powerful new Avengers. Number 10. Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel was once Carol Danvers and is now Kamala Khan, and of course for this list we're focusing on Kamala, who was a new addition to the Avengers team in 2015, after making her first unnamed appearance only 2 years earlier in 2013 in the comics. Kamala is a huge Carol Danvers fan, which is what inspired her to take up the mantle Miss Marvel after Carol dropped it, taking up the Captain Marvel mantle instead herself. Kamala as Miss Marvel has powers which allow her to alter her body's physiology, allowing her to stretch, change size and shape, and in theory, straight up shapeshift. Her powers come from inhuman heritage, which was activated by her exposure to the Terrigen bomb. Kamala joined the team for a time during all new, all different Avengers, and remains a fan favorite hero at Marvel Comics. And to clarify before we move on to point 9, this is going to be a list of Avengers that have recently come onto the team, as opposed to new Avengers, which is kind of its own thing. There's a lot of new Avengers, so I just want to clarify that. Number 9. Wasp. Not the same Wasp who years ago was actually the leader of the Avengers for a while. Nuh-uh, we are not talking about Janet Van Dyne here, we are talking about Nadia Van Dyne, who despite her seemingly misleading name is actually the daughter of Hank Pym and his first wife, Maria Travoia. After her mother Maria was kidnapped and later killed, Nadia ended up being raised in the Red Room, considered a valuable asset due to her natural aptitude for science and academia, believed to be somewhat in part due to the fact that she was Hank's naturally born daughter. Nadia would eventually escape the Red Room and attempt to locate her father in the US, only to find out that he had recently died during a fight against Ultron. Nadia felt compelled to meet her stepmother, Janet, desiring to become the new Wasp. The two ended up getting along well, and Janet even gave Nadia her blessing to take her last name, seeing her as family. Hence, Nadia became both Nadia Van Dyne and the new Wasp, also going on to join the Avengers team. Number 8. Spider-Man. Peter Parker as Spider-Man has of course teamed up with the Avengers before, but Miles Morales as Spider-Man is a newer addition, not just in terms of the Avengers team, but also still relatively new in terms of him existing in 616. Miles Morales is originally a Spider-Man who hails from the Ultimate Comics line originating in Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe. He was given a new home on Earth 616 after his world had been destroyed as a result of showing kindness to and sharing food with Molecule Man during the Secret Wars event. True story. Thank goodness for pocket cheeseburgers. Miles has a power set very similar to Peter's in many ways, but also has a few unique abilities of his own. He can shock his opponents with venom blasts and can sneak up on them with his spider camouflage, which he can use to appear invisible. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about even more newest additions to the Avengers we've seen in recent years, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. Number 7. Valkyrie. Valkyrie is Jane Foster, who was originally known as Thor when she joined the Avengers team the first time around. Jane ended up becoming the new Thor after Thor Odinson, the original Thor, was deemed unworthy. As the new Mighty Thor, editorially referred to at times as Lady Thor, Jane joined the Avengers team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series in 2015. Currently in the comics, Jane is no longer the Mighty Thor, but was welcomed into Asgardia by Odin, who gave her a new title and power set, making her a new Valkyrie. To clarify, I'm saying Asgardia because she was kind of like welcome to the whole world of Asgard, but she didn't go live on Asgard or anything specific like that. Currently, Valkyrie is the mantle that she uses. Being imbued with the spirit of Valkyrie Brunhilde gives Jane the strength and power set of an Asgardian warrior. In addition, there are specific powers that are also granted to Valkyries like herself. She can teleport, has death perception, and can see ghosts, in addition to being a super strong and capable fighter. Number 6. Starbrand. I kinda miss when Brandy was just like a little Starbrand baby, but of course this is comics and heroes can't stay babies forever. In fact, they can't even stay a baby for more than a year apparently, especially if they're joining the Avengers, which I kinda get. Technically, the young Starbrand, Baby Selby, later given the first name Brandy, was in the care of the Avengers, not really specifically on the team, kinda sorta like their ward. But despite being one of the youngest heroes to ever be affiliated with that team, this little Starbrand also also would often help the team out on missions, being so insanely powerful. Starbrand possesses the Starbrand, which grants her a great amount of basically cosmic power. She is capable of interstellar flight and flight in general, energy manipulation and projection, creating energy blasts, and technically should also be super durable and have some level of healing factor. The Starbrand's power is believed to be potentially infinite when it comes to their power levels, making Starbrand one of the most powerful members on the team, in baby form, child form, or young adult form as she currently is as of the end of issue 52 of the current 2018 Avengers series. Number 5. Ghost Rider. While Starbrand might have the greatest potential for power, and we aren't sure entirely what she's capable of just yet, Robbie Reyes is a bit more experienced when it comes to his powers, and even when he was less experienced, he actually accidentally killed one of the previous Starbrands, Kevin Connor, in Marvel Legacy. So for those reasons, I thought we should give him a bit of a boost when it comes to his ranking on this list. Robbie Reyes first appeared in the comic scene in 2014 in All New Ghost Rider issue number 1. He is an all-new Ghost Rider, just like the series claims. During a street race gone wrong, Robbie was killed and ended up possessed by the ghost who haunted the car that he was driving, becoming the new Ghost Rider. He joined up with the Avengers recently in the comics, and I think he makes a great addition to the team. I personally love Robbie Reyes, so yeah, I'm here for it. Number 4. Winter Hulk. While Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk may have joined the Avengers long ago, first joining up back in the 80s, she's gone through a lot of changes since then. One recent and major one, which also returned her to her smaller, smarter, more playful and sassy, yet still very powerful form, happened recently in Avengers comics. For a brief time, She-Hulk, then known as just Hulk, ended up becoming Winter Hulk. Winter Hulk happened as a result of Jen allowing herself to be kidnapped by the Winter Guard of Russia to try and figure out what they were up to. What devious things are they planning? In the end, they attempted to mind wipe and brainwash Hulk to turn her into one of their agents. And they kinda succeeded. Although the process was interrupted, for a brief time Jen acted as their agent, Winter Hulk. However, as Winter Hulk, Jen still managed to fight against her programming, and alert her fellow Avengers when sent to attack Namor and Atlantis. In the end, Winter Hulk was forced to absorb a ton of radiation to protect the citizens of Atlantis. She managed to discharge the gamma radiation she had absorbed safely, and as a result was returned to her original form, ultimately deciding to retire from the Avengers team after these events and return to practicing law. And now we have a new She-Hulk series that I have heard nothing but good things about. I really need to get reading my first issue. Number 3. Phoenix. While Phoenix is definitely one of the most powerful superheroes to be on the Avengers team, her history with them is a bit more lengthy than you might initially think, which is why I ranked her a little bit lower on this list than I normally would. Phoenix herself was back on the original Avengers team, the prehistoric Avengers, or the Avengers of 1 million BC. This avatar for Phoenix was known as Firehair. However, Firehair only made her first appearance even in 2017 in the comics, so she's also kinda new in a way, even though she's super old. Does that make sense? Maya Lopez, aka Echo, is the current host of the Phoenix Force and the current Phoenix, who also finds herself on the Avengers team. Her being Phoenix is new, but her being on the Avengers team is not new. She rejoined the team in 2021 as Phoenix, which is quite new, like I said, but she actually was a member of the Avengers way back in 2005, when she was using the mantle of Ronin. Still, Maya being Phoenix and being part of the Avengers altogether is quite fresh right now, despite both the Phoenix Force's history with the prehistoric team and Maya's own history with the present day team. And of course, Phoenix is one of the most powerful entities in the entire Marvel universe. So despite her being kind of a new old combo thing, we have to show respect to the blazingly brilliant and powerful Maya Lopez, aka Echo, aka Phoenix, on this list. Number 2. Cable. Nathan Summers ended up joining the Avengers team at a time when Captain America was seeking to present a show of unity. Hence, Cable ended up being on the Avengers Unity division, which was meant to bring together Avengers and X-Men after events of Avengers vs. X-Men had created tension between the two superhero groups of Earth. Series-wise, the team was known as the Uncanny Avengers, with Cable joining up as early as issue number 4. Cable is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic due to him being the offspring of X-Men member Cyclops and his wife at the time, Mr. Sinister created clone of Jean Grey, Madeline Pryor. Despite Maddie being his birth mother, Jean has also been like a mother to Nate after she was implanted with the memories of basically raising him, making her kind of like his telepathically retcon mom, with Maddie becoming more like a surrogate mother in terms of her relationship with Nate, formerly known to her as Baby Christopher. Oh, baby Christopher. Number 1. Avenger Prime. Avenger Prime is kinda like all of the Avengers merged together. At least, that's what the original version of this character was like. They made their first appearance in the 2013 Mighty Avengers series, but another character with that name also recently reappeared in the 2021 Free Comic Book Day Avengers and Hulk comic. They showed up in the Avengers portion of that double feature story comic. Here, Avengers Prime is the leader of the Deathlok Avengers forces, who basically stands guard at the God Quarry, seeking to watch, protect, and warn against major multiversal threats and potential chronal collapses. Presumably, this is some version of Avenger Prime that decided to stay omnipotent and bonded together. At least that's what I'm assuming. Some people are assuming different things. When we saw Avenger Prime last, or an alternate version of them if you will, they were created using a ritual which allowed the team of Mighty Avengers to bond together. Technically, Avenger Prime stands to be the most powerful of the Avengers, as they should be made up of one or more teams or rosters potentially combined together. Now, of course, some people believe that Avenger Prime is actually some sort of alternate version or some future version of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, but we don't really know for sure yet. Whoever they are though, they definitely seem to have a lot of time, a lot of power, and a lot of resources on their hands, especially for being a shadowy figure.
A lot has happened to the X-Men in general, but particularly over the past decade or so. A lot of mutants have had their crack at being a part of the mutant race's premier superhero team, and we're gonna talk about them. Now, the mutant armor isn't a new X-Men member in the regular 616 universe, but recently, as in this year, 2024, the year of our Lord, thanks to the newly formed Marvel Ultimate Universe and Peach Momoko, we are getting a new interesting take on her character. Ultimate X-Men #1 stars Hisako Ichiki, aka Armor, as she first uncovers her mutant abilities. Now, first of all, Peach Momoko sets this story in Japan, and the whole thing is just this mix of cute but also very heavy and super cool. What's interesting about this take on Armor, and possibly the other mutants going forward for the Ultimate Universe, is how their abilities appear to be a bit more magically oriented. In the story, her powers appear to be almost supplied by a strange amulet she's given by a friend who then lost his life. Now, that's just me speculating. After a shadowy presence who people are guessing may be the Shadow King appears to Hisako, she is riding her bike away from where they met, and her power activates as a car nearly hits her, and her enormous armor stops it dead in its tracks. Definitely give that first issue a read if you get a chance, cause I glossed over a lot. Next up, Joanna Cargill, like a lot of the X-Men, started off as a villain. She ran away from home after her mutant powers activated, and she caused the passing of her not so great dad in self-defense. From there, she would join Apocalypse's Alliance of Evil, which is a silly name, where she would do battle with the X-Men. Now, gifted with skin that is extremely strong and resistant to attacks, Frenzy became an X-Men member in 2011 in X-Men Legacy number 250. Her steel-hard skin is so strong that it has only ever been penetrated by adamantium. She is also highly resistant to extreme hot and cold, as well as radiation, and she can withstand high-impact forces like Cyclops' optic beam or a punch from She-Hulk. Now, speaking of She-Hulk, a byproduct of Frenzy's power is that she has super strength as well, enough to lift around 25 to 75 tons. And she can punch Jennifer Walters back if she really wants to. Frenzy has gone toe-to-toe with Rogue, arguably one of the most powerful X-Men, and she was classified as a level 6 threat by Cable, who helped hone her exceptional skills as a hand-to-hand combatant. Now, going back, if you need more incentive to read that new Ultimate X-Men, then I shall give you some. At the end of the very first issue, the cover of the second issue, which I haven't actually been able to read yet, features a completely new character who goes by the hero name Maystorm. Now, Maystorm is confirmed to have weather abilities and is clearly inspired by the revolutionary Storm from Ultimate Black Panther. Inspired by, but this is a wholly new character with their own unique design, and it seems the character will be joining both Armor and a few other characters that I'm going to talk about in a minute as the first new Ultimate X-Men team. Momoko created this character for last year's New Champions variant cover, but May Storm will finally debut in Ultimate X-Men number 2 of this year. Similar to Frenzy, Quentin Quire used to be a sort of villain back in the New X-Men. He spent his earlier years being an absolutely despicable kid who I always kind of wanted to just like kick in the shins. He was trying to be an anarchist leader of mutants and ended up doing more harm than good. After the schism of the X-Men, Wolverine took him to the school that he opened up. In a relatively short amount of time, Quentin became a more well-rounded character, and now he is someone I think is actually kind of cool. He still stayed a bit of a rebel and a narcissistic jerk, which you would think would make people hate him, but when he stops trying to cause anarchy, these traits end up becoming a fun aspect of his personality. Now on Krakoa, he's back to annoying Wolverine and being pretty insufferable, but it's to a point where you kind of love him for it, maybe just a little bit. What's a little bit less fun is that recently Quentin got his head lopped off and placed in an Orcus container designed to make use of mutant body parts by Sabretooth. Now he recently called in the Exiles for help using his powers, so we shall see where that goes. Okay, I hope y'all don't mind, but I've got another of the new Ultimate X-Men that I'm going to talk about, and their name is Nico Minoru. Now, this is where things get really interesting and leads me to believe even more that these new X-Men will find some of their origins being influenced by magic and mysticism. Nico is a Japanese magical hero who uses the powerful Staff of One, and it's very interesting because on Earth 616, Minoru is not a mutant at all. In normal canon, she is a descendant of a magical family who are part of a cult. Nico steals her parents' staff after finding out that they are part of this cult, and she uses it alongside the team of teenagers known as the Runaways. Now, with full transparency, it is unclear yet if Momoko will be retconning Nico into being a mutant, or if the blending of magic and mutation in Ultimate X-Men will see her magical bloodline coming into play, but she does appear to be a part of this new team of X-Men that is forming, which is something I am excited to see play out. Next up, Monet St. Croix has an interesting past, and her family is a big part of that. Her brother is an incredibly powerful bad dude who trapped her in a different form where she is known as Penance. As Penance, she had diamond skin, a telepathic resistance, and super sharp claws. M can even combine with her younger siblings Claudette and Nicole, but on her own, Monet is essentially a near perfect being. All her physical and mental skills are greater than the natural physical limits of peak humans, including her intuition and her genius level intellect. She can fly at supersonic speeds by sheer force of will, she can read minds, project her thoughts into the minds of others, and defensively mask her mind against telepathic intrusion, and has even displayed some telekinesis. M, or Penance, became a part of the X-Men in 2013 in X-Men Volume 4, number 7. Okay nerds, I have one more Ultimate X-Men to talk about, and then I promise we will keep talking about actual 616 heroes. Peach Pomoko's design sheets have also included two new mutants, Mori and Natsu, whose origins have not really been revealed at all, and we don't know much more than their names and their designs. However, the internet has still learned some things from that alone. The two biggest things of note about the information we have is that one of the names, Natsu, means summer in Japanese, and one of these new mutants has one blindfolded eye and one red eye, which is under some kind of visor device thing. Now Summer, as you might know, is a big name in the X-Men world, and with the red eye and all that jazz, fans believe that the character of Natsu could be a version of Cyclops or Scott Summers, or maybe a character at least inspired by Cyclops, although the design is different enough that the character will definitely stand as their own person. To be honest, that whole one eye thing is also kind of giving me Cable vibes, but I have no idea how that would even work, so for now, we're sticking with possibly Cyclops. Maybe. Now, although he first appeared in 2007 and was briefly on the X-Men in 2009, as a 2018 recruit to the X-Men and X-Men Red number 4, Gentle is someone I kinda just love talking about, so I'm including him on the list. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle against a Sentinel and his strength is said to rival Colossus's, with his resting strength increased every time he uses his powers. Gentle is a very strong and powerful mutant, but the catch is that he only uses his powers in emergencies. Because of his poor treatment he suffered as a child, Gentle suffers great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos in Wakanda to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive. On top of that, Gentle has pacifist beliefs, but his calm, peaceful demeanor should not fool anyone because Gentle has used his abilities to halt the one Sentinel from destroying the Xavier Institute, and he's such a cool character. A listed X-Men member since 2017, Inc. sets himself apart from anyone else on this list by having the unique distinction of being a normal human being who received his powers through being tattooed by a mutant. Basically, the mutant who was the giver of his tattoos imbued those tattoos with powers, but the coolest thing about these powers is that they change into whatever tattoo he chooses to use. That's probably the worst way to explain it, so let me give some examples. Ink can make others who touch him extremely sick using a biohazard symbol tattoo that he received on his hand. He used this one on some cops who tried to arrest him in a tattoo shop when he first showed up. He gained superhuman strength from a tattoo that mimics Colossus's osmium metal skin. 2 lightning bolt symbols on his temples give him low-level telepathy. He's got a tattoo of wings for flight, an explosion that lets him explode stuff, and a caduceus symbol that lets him heal others, among other tattoos. But the real show of how powerful he can be came when he got the Phoenix symbol as a tattoo that actually gave him Phoenix powers, which is nuts. His Phoenix Force symbol tattoo allowed him to defeat the Y-Men, and he keeps all these tattoos able to use whichever one he needs in the moment. It's awesome. But last on our list today is Old Man Logan. Now, most of you know this Logan from the Amazing Old Man Logan story and reality, where basically everything is ruined. The villains rule over everything with an iron fist in this wasteland. That is a whole story that we have talked about tons of times, but after the events of Secret Wars in 2015, crotchety old Logan made his way to the Prime 616 universe when main Wolverine had bit the dust, temporarily of course. Old Man Logan stepped in and sort of not really took over his place. Now this Logan didn't have the same berserker rage and he was much wiser. The main difference was he didn't fly off the handle as often. He didn't go off on his own and do things that may have put his team in danger, and his biggest accomplishment may have been wiping out both the evil Hulk from his own world and another evil Hulk, Maestro, in Earth Prime. Unfortunately, Old Man Logan finally went to the afterlife in 2019, back in his home reality. Are you bored of the same old X-Men? Well, here are 10 pretty new ones. Now when I say the name Pyro, most X-Men fans will think of St. John Alderweireld, who has been around since the 80s, but that's not who I'm talking about today. Simon Lasker is the newest version of Pyro, debuting in 2017. When Lasker first manifested his mutant powers, Mesmero appeared to him in the form of Charles Xavier and brainwashed him into taking the name Pyro and joining a new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And this group of mutants were defeated by the X-Men and the brainwashing was broken. From there, he went on to join the X-Men Blue Team. Lasker's powers were very similar to the original Pyro, with the only difference being that he could generate his own flame, not needing an existing flame for him to control. Unfortunately though, the character went to the pearly gates in 2020, not to be seen since. Meanwhile, the original Pyro went on to join the Krakoan Marauders. Debuting in Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2 Number 1 in March of 2014, Lynn Lee, aka Nature Girl, started off at Jean Grey's School for Higher Learning. When Kitty Pryde relocated the X-Men to Central Park and the school was renamed to the Xavier Institute for Mutant Education and Outreach, Lynn Lee decided to join in. She became part of Jubilee's X team in Generation X Volume 2 Number 2 in 2017, but after she witnessed some of the horrible things humanity was and is doing to the Earth and to nature, she instead became an eco-warrior fighting back against humanity, which makes sense given her powers. Nature Girl's powers are directly connected to the natural world, so she can communicate, influence, manipulate, and control nature, animals, plants, and natural phenomena like the weather and geology of the Earth. She was on the run from Wolverine for a while and was able to get away from him a few times using her abilities, and more recently, she mutated even more and became even more uncontrollable, but she looks pretty awesome, so we can let that kind of thing slide. Debuting in Powers of X #1, which released in early 2019, Rasputin 4 is one of the more interesting recent additions to the X-Men, but she's also one of the most overpowered. Created as possibly the most powerful of Mr. Sinister's chimeras, which were basically spliced together mutants who possess more than one hero's power, Rasputin 4 possesses 5 different powers. 5. She has the osmium metal skin of Colossus, the telekinesis and telepathy of Quentin Quire, the force fields of Gunther Bane, aka Unis the Untouchable, the intangibility of Kitty Pryde, and just to top it all off, she has the healing factor of X-23 Laura Kinney. So as you can imagine, she is a force to be reckoned with. And on top of that, she wields the Soul Sword. Currently, as far as I've read, Rasputin 4 is working pretty closely with Charles Xavier to fight back against Orchis and others during the fall of X. Now, while she was initially controlled by Sinister, he himself undid that, and together the two actually saved the entire universe, with Rasputin doing most of the heavy lifting. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red #1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Now, Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and she first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the highest earning CEOs in India. While I think that's pretty awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Now, her limitations at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. Trinary was one of the mutants recorded to X-Corps by Mirage following the Mutant Massacre at the Hellfire Gala. With WizKid, Trinary helped to run X-Corps Island and keep it cloaked away from Orchis. Next up, Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men #1 in 2012, when we also first saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with her friends, and a boy, when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with said boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to just pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and took her in. She has been referred to as near Omega level with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which she uses as a member of the Five to age up whoever is being resurrected, and she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over her powers from time to time, there is no doubt that she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Although initially introduced in 2010, Jimmy Hudson was actually the son of Wolverine and Magda Lencher, but crucially in the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Now, he would go on to join that universe's X-Men as Wolverine following the passing of the original Wolverine, but then, following the events of Secret Wars, Jimmy found himself within the main Marvel Universe in X-Men Blue #5, where he is tracked down in the Canadian wilderness by the time-displaced original X-Men, who he attacked, believing they were working for Mr. Sinister. After fending off an attack by Sinister's new team of Marauders, the X-Men offered him a place on the team. Now, Jimmy would remain a part of the team throughout the series, aiding them in various different missions, such as an adventure in outer space that saw him bonded with the Poison symbiote, and those two have been having a bit of an identity crisis. Although he had thought himself and his powers ridiculous, which they kind of are if we're being honest, Fabio Medina, aka Egg, and his battle cry Gold Balls is kind of awesome. Debuting in 2013, Fabio can produce golden balls of different sizes that shoot out from any part of his body and make the sound poink each time they hit something, and it is hilarious. The golden balls he fires actually seem to bounce. Now, that's pretty odd, but these gold balls are actually more useful than initially thought. After After he moved to Krakoa with the other mutants, it was discovered that Goldballs' balls are actually infertile eggs, and if these eggs are made fertile, it could allow for unlimited resurrection of the mutant race. So yes, the golden balls he was firing out of his body at Sentinels and bad guys were actually infertile, bouncy golden eggs. Does it make me slightly uncomfortable? Yes, but he did become a member of the Five that combined their powers to resurrect deceased mutants, and that was really cool. Next up, Gabby Kinney, aka Scout, also at one point known as Honey Badger, may be young, but she has more than proved herself when she became a part of the X-Men in 2018. Scout is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and a crazy regenerative healing factor that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura Kinney, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout and one of the main Wolverine family members. Also, her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared a pretty immediate bond, and he is basically her pet and sidekick, which is just so cool to me. Becoming an X-Men member in 2012 in New Mutants Volume 3 #45, Blank is the mutant leader of the Exiles, a group responsible for the repairing of timelines and worlds of the multiverse. She has the gift of teleportation, but unlike characters like Nightcrawler, Blank's teleportation abilities work through portals. This is really useful as she can teleport a whole group of people, and she can teleport others specifically through the use of javelin-like energy that she can throw at whatever or whoever she wants to teleport. These javelins can also be used to make opponents unconscious when it hits them. She is an exceptional fighter, having trained under Sabretooth, and she needs that skill, especially as she leads the Exiles. Also, fun fact, she had her live-action debut in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie. During that super awesome intro where the X-Men fight the Sentinels, Blink is the mutant throwing all the pink portals around and being awesome, and until she got then she stopped. And last up for today, Multiple Man is an interesting choice for this list, as he has been around for a really long time in comics, but while he has been a hero for a good chunk of that time, he is still only a recent addition to the X-Men. Multiple Man was recruited in 2019's Uncanny X-Men Volume 5 #13. Jamie or James Madrox is actually a changeling, which is sort of like a genetic precursor to mutants who gain their abilities at birth instead of having their X gene activated later on. For James, his power is that of duplication. He can duplicate himself multiple times upon impact, and each of his dupes can create one single dupe of its own. One of the real benefits of this power though is that Prime Madrox will retain any memories of any of his dupes. So let's say you have to read like 10 books in a week. Well, you could have like 10 dupes all read one book each, and then when they re-merge with you, you have all their memories of each book. Multiple Man is like an information gathering powerhouse, but he can also use his ability to learn skills, like one of his dupes trained as a Shaolin monk and trained in meditation. One was a trained EMT, one audited an anatomy class for 6 months, one passed the New York bar exam, and one claimed to be the world's greatest detective. He's definitely one of my favorite mutants.
There are the Avengers we all know, and then there are those we don't. Some of them are well-known characters you wouldn't expect to see, and some are completely new to comics and the Avengers. While others on the team might have the greatest potential for power, Robbie Reyes is a bit more experienced when it comes to his powers. And even when he was less experienced, he accidentally killed one of the previous Star Brands, Kevin Connor, in Marvel Legacy, which is pretty crazy. For those reasons, I thought we should include him on this list. Robbie Reyes first appeared in 2014 in All New Ghost Rider issue #1. While debuting in the comics during the All New initiative, like the title claims, he is also an all-new Ghost Rider. During a street race gone wrong, Robbie was killed and ended up possessed by the ghost who haunted the car he was driving, becoming the new Ghost Rider. He joined up with the Avengers around 2018, joining them in their battle against the Dark Celestials. Personally, Robbie is actually one of my favorite Ghost Riders, and I think Ghost Rider in general as a character makes a great addition to the Avengers team. Ghost Rider's just so powerful. Weapon America is one of the members of a multiversal team of Avengers that we saw appear in Avengers Assemble Omega. This was a big comic with a lot of new Avengers Avengers, both in terms of characters who are new and new recruits to the team in general. First introduced, Weapon America is a member of the Howling Commandos on his Earth 20504. He seems to be a combination of multiple characters in terms of his appearance, abilities, and likeness, appearing as a blend of Captain America, Wolverine, with some nuke mixed in as well. He's got the nuke tattoo and everything. And also, yes, if you were wondering, this is one of the Avengers that's also part of Avengers Prime team. Loki Avengers Prime, not 2013 Avengers Prime. Next up, Mr. Sweeney, aka the Bruiser? Now, while the Bruiser isn't really an Avengers member, technically, he did recently join up with the group in a way as an ally. We recently learned in the comics that the true identity of Mr. Sweeney was that of, yeah, Bruiser. Initially, the Bruiser was a villain who made his first appearance in the 80s in the comics in Avengers issue 201. That's the direct issue after the tragically iconic issue 200. Yeah, that issue 200. In issue 201 though, Jarvis actually takes on the Bruiser on his own. He finds out that the Bruiser has been terrorizing the neighborhood of the Bronx, and specifically Jarvis's mom, who lives there. In retaliation, Edwin Jarvis takes on the Bruiser himself, refusing to call the Avengers for a matter that he feels can just be easily handled with some help from himself by the neighborhood. Jarvis boxes the Bruiser and inspires the people in the neighborhood to unite and rise up against the Bruiser, and in the end, the Bruiser is basically forced to admit defeat and he ends up retreating. Now it seems years later, appearing as Mr. Sweeney, that the Bruiser has turned over a new leaf and instead of fighting against Jarvis has actually found employment as his assistant. I kind of love it. More an Avengers ally here than a straight up Avenger, but this was such a cute little cameo and like callback to the 80s, I just had to mention it. It's so random and I kind of love it. Although weirdly, this version of Nighthawk was actually a Mephisto creation. Kyle Richmond, or this version of him anyways, normally of the Squadron Supreme, ended up being recruited by the Avengers to help them in their fight against Mephisto. Perhaps it was because of his desire to do good as he is a hero, or his personal agenda against Mephisto, but for a time Nighthawk did join the team. Nighthawk is not normally considered to be a new character and has joined up with Captain America's Secret Avengers in the past as well during Civil War I, at least he did for a very short time, but technically that was a different Nighthawk, as this one is the one that is believed to have come into existence in 2018 as a construct that Mephisto created to be a member of Agent Phil Coulson's Squadron Supreme of America. Yeah. Oh, comics. I'm not exactly sure when this next member of the Avengers joined up with the team fully, specifically anyways, but I think in regards to the comics it would be somewhere around early 2023, when the multiversal Avengers were coming together as a team in the culmination of Jason Aaron's Avengers run. Yeah, Avengers Prime Multiversal Avengers, that multiversal Avengers. Captain Carter was one of the heroes who appeared there. Now if you are an MCU Peggy Carter or Haley Atwell fan like me, then you know Captain Carter from Multiverse of Madness and Marvel's What If animated series. But guess what? It also seems this character, or some other version of this character at least, also joined up with the Avengers in the comics as well. She appears throughout the major final story arc of Aaron's run, appearing in the main Avengers series, in Avengers Forever, and in Avengers Assemble Omega. This version of Carter came to be in the place of Steven Rogers. On her Earth, it was Peggy, not Steve, who became the super soldier between the two of them, and so she becomes Captain Carter instead of Captain America. For those that don't know. You know, we're in the future when you're recruiting a whole city to your cause. This is exactly what happened here with the Impossible City. The Impossible City was initially used as a base who was in the group of multiversal heroes. Initially in the comics, we aren't actually informed who were the ones that were behind that. What we do know though is after they left their base, their prisoners escaped. This villainous troop was known as the Ashen Combine. The Ashen Combine would then make the city their own base, and it would be the place they had their final stand against the Avengers. When the Ashen Combine was defeated, the Impossible City actually offered to join up with the Avengers team. Oh yeah, the Impossible City is also aptly named because it's sentient as well. Pretty impossible stuff. The Avengers accepted the offer, and as such, the Impossible City became an official member of the Avengers team. So yeah, now they have a whole city on their team. Nathan Summers ended up joining the Avengers team at a time when Captain America was seeking to present a show of unity. Hence, Cable ended up on the Avengers Unity division, which was meant to bring together the Avengers and X-Men after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men had created tension between the two superhero groups of Earth. Series-wise, the team was known as the Uncanny Avengers, with Cable joining up as early as issue 4. Technically, this is also volume 3 of Uncanny Avengers if you wanted to go find it yourself and give it a read. Cable is an extremely powerful telepath and telekinetic due to him being the offspring of X-Men member Cyclops and his wife, Mr. Sinister created clone of Jean Grey made from a spark of the Phoenix, Madeline Pryor. Despite Maddie being his birth mother, Jean has also kind of been like a mother to Nate after she was implanted with the memories of raising him, making him kind of like her retconned in a telepathic way son, with Maddie becoming more like kind of a surrogate in terms of her relationship with Nathan and just kind of how she's treated in the comics. I don't agree with it, but that's where it is. Formerly known to her as Baby Nathan, and back in the day as Baby Christopher. Constantly called Baby Christopher back in the day. And I feel like now when I call him Baby Christopher, people are like, do you know who we're talking about? It's Nathan Summers. And I'm like, yes, but remember when he was Baby Christopher? It's one of his names, so I guess it kind of makes sense. Joining up in the same issue as Nighthawk, who we talked about earlier, was Brandy Selby, aka the cosmic hero known as Starbrand. Starbrand was initially an infant whom the team adopted and raised together. She would rapidly grow up while in their care and would ultimately end up joining the team as one of their most powerful members. However, her time with the team was short-lived, and in the end she would sacrifice herself as a hero to protect the rest of the Avengers. Also, note to self, if I have a baby and I'm about to perish, maybe don't leave that baby in the care of the Avengers, because it might not work out. Avenger Prime was initially a name used by a character who was essentially all of the Avengers merged together. That version of the character made their first appearance in the 2013 Mighty Avengers series, but another character with that name also appeared much later on in the 2021 Free Comic Book Day Avengers and Hulk comic. There, Avengers Prime was shown to be the leader of the Deathlock Avengers forces who stand guard at the God Quarry, seeking to watch, protect, and warn against major multiversal threats and potential chronal collapses. We'd also come to learn that this Avenger Prime was actually an alternate reality version of Loki, who leads his own massive multiversal Avengers team. Yes, the one that characters like Weapon America appear on, and the Deathlock Avengers. Loki was forced to do this after coming to accept his very important role in the formation of the Avengers across the multiverse and across time. After attempting to dodge their assembling in his own timeline and acting as his Earth's sole protector, he accidentally caused the extermination of all life in his universe. Whoops. After attempting to end it all, Loki woke up in the God Quarry and found himself tasked with protecting all of time, assembling his own extensive team of Avengers to do so. But he was pretty embarrassed, so he mostly just kept to himself and stayed in the shadows. The Phoenix made her first appearance as a member of the Avengers a long time ago, way back in the past in 1 million BC, joining up with the prehistoric or Stone Age Avengers. How does this make her a new member? Well, while in canon this happened a long time ago, it wouldn't be revealed to us readers to have happened until the modern day, as the Avengers of 1 million BC first appeared in 2017 in Marvel Legacy issue number 1. So it's a super old character, but appeared pretty recently.
To be an Avenger is an honor that many Marvel heroes strive for, and every year more and more make the cut. Heroes like Eric Brooks, or as most of us know him, Blade. Blade has been around since 1973, so it actually took me by surprise when I learned that he didn't become an actual mainline Avenger until Avengers Volume 8, number 12. Born with an extremely unique vampire physiology, Eric used his powers to wipe out evil vampires, taking on the title of Daywalker. Now, to be fair, he was once part of the Mighty Avengers before being invited to join the main Avengers team by Black Panther. But while on the Avengers, he did a lot. Like, I mean a lot. He ended a vampire civil war, saved Ghost Rider in hell, battled the Dark Elf Malekith in the War of the Realms, helped stop the Egyptian god Khonshu from taking over the entire Earth, and he recruited Dracula and his vampire nation to help fight Null, the symbiote god, and King in Black. Blade came to the Avengers with a heck of a lot of supernatural expertise, and he was amazing on the team, until he left to be Dracula's own sheriff, which... what? Roberto da Costa, the mutant who also goes by the name Sunspot, first ever joined the Avengers, accepting Captain America's offer alongside the mutant Cannonball. Sunspot came across as a bit of a comedic member of the team, and he didn't really seem to take his Avenger status as seriously as others did, but that pretty quickly turned around. Where Iron Man used to fill in the laid-back billionaire role on the team, Roberto stepped into that role pretty smoothly and got the team out of quite a few problematic moments. It's arguable to say that he really stepped into his own as an Avenger when he bought the whole of AIM and used the organization to create his own Avengers team in New Avengers Volume 4, and then again in US Avengers. His time as an Avenger not only boosted up his status from a C-list hero to one in the spotlight, but it also brought multiple creative Avengers series, which as comic book fans is something that we will not be upset about ever. Maya Lopez, also known as Echo, is honestly really cool. She has really cool photographic reflexes just like Taskmaster. She's been Ronin for a time and even been a host for the Phoenix Force, and she also became an Avenger. Now initially Maya was actually a bit of a villain, being manipulated by the Kingpin in order to try and take down Daredevil. Luckily though, Maya was able to discover the truth about Kingpin and the lies he fed her, and that pushed her into reshifting her focus to become a hero. It was from there that she became Ronin, and thanks to a good old recommendation from Daredevil himself, she met up with Captain America and started working with the New Avengers in 2005. She would eventually be brought down by Elektra, and she would eventually be saved and revived, helped out during World War Hulk, Secret Invasion, and she even worked very closely with Moon Knight for a while before being revived yet again, and was eventually granted the Phoenix Force. She would eventually join the actual true Avengers in Avengers Volume 8 number 54 from 2022, facing the multiversal Masters of Evil. Next up, a former Marine and scientist turned superhero, Adam Brashear is not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters around. Blue Marvel didn't actually make his debut in Marvel Comics until 2008, but when he showed up, his origin story retroactively placed him in the Marvel Universe way back in the day. His origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, which should in theory pretty much impossible, and it gave him an insane amount of power. Brashear would rejoin the superhero community alongside Luke Cage's 1970s Mighty Avengers, which in the real world happened in 2014, before he went on to join with Captain Marvel and Black Panther on the Avengers adjacent team known as the Ultimates in 2016, and most recently, he joined the Defenders and went rather, beyond. Next up, Eden Fessy, aka Manifold, first appeared as an incredibly underrated hero in Jonathan Hickman and Brian Michael Bendis' Secret Warriors series, alongside a group of other legacy heroes recruited by Nick Fury in 2009. Now, Manifold is a mutant with the insanely godlike ability to manipulate space, which he most often uses as a teleporter. He was actually the student to another mutant teleporter known as Gateway, but following with writer Jonathan Hickman, Manifold joined the Avengers in Avengers Volume 5 in 2014/2015 for one of the greatest Avengers runs we have had in a long time. As the Avengers expanded to a bigger scope than they have ever done before, Manifold was pretty instrumental in some of their galaxy-wide conflicts, and he even sacrificed himself during Secret Wars. Thankfully though, he was brought back and has become one of the most powerful and versatile mutants and Avengers. Now, there have been multiple Nova Primes throughout the history of the universe. Richard Rider is absolutely the main one, and he is fantastic, but when we first got Samuel Alexander in Point One Number 1 in 2011, he brought just a whole different vibe. Granted, being a younger guy with some huge shoes to fill, he doesn't exude the same kind of power that Richard Rider does, but that doesn't make him any less powerful. Sam has grown into a hero all of his own. He's fought alien warlords, evil Avengers doppelgangers, and interdimensional monsters, and he absolutely deserves the Nova mantle. While he can be reckless from time to time, thanks to his youth, independence, and loyalty, he still got offered a spot on 2016's all-new, all-different Avengers #1 by none other than the God of Thunder, Thor himself. Unfortunately for the Avengers though, Nova left the team pretty soon after with a few other younger heroes to form the Champions. And one of those young heroes was none other than Miles Morales. In the aftermath of the multiversal event Secret Wars, the second Spider-Man of the Ultimate Universe, aka Earth 1610, joined Marvel's main Earth 616 reality, and not too long after that, he also joined the Avengers in 2016 alongside Nova and Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. Now, Miles has essentially all the same abilities as Spider-Man himself, but then he has some that are wholly his own, and they're actually pretty cool. His signature difference in my eyes is his venom. It's like a form of bioelectricity that he can emit from his body and use in some really cool ways, like in punches, beams, and blasts, and he can even infuse it into his own webbing. Miles is also able to use a spider camouflage to make his whole body and even his clothes and costume go invisible, but as I already said with Nova, these younglings weren't on the Avengers team for very long, leaving to form the Champions. But for Miles, his powers and his awesome mind actually lent a lot to the Avengers while he was there, and in return, he learned learned a heck of a lot from the older heroes while he was on that team. The Smashers of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard are human-like aliens using exospecs to grant themselves powers. Now for a long time, Vril Rock was the sole Smasher, but he unfortunately met his end at the hands of the incredibly powerful mutant Vulcan. Isabel Izzy Kane is the granddaughter of World War II hero and Captain America buddy, Captain Terror. She was first ever introduced in Avengers Volume 5 number 1, and Izzy found the exospecs of a Smasher on the farm that she was raised on. These exospecs spoke to her and beckoned her to put them on, giving her access to the Smasher's powers. Izzy then traveled to the Shi'ar world of Chandalar, where she became a sub-guardian of the Imperial Guard. Now after returning back home to Earth, Izzy's grandfather with his last words told her to become a hero, and he gave her Captain America's business card, which, I'm sorry, that's kind of hilarious. Now being the first and only human recruit of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, gaining super strength, speed, energy blasts, and flight, plus her adventurous spirit and her grandfather's legacy, Captain America brought her onto the Avengers pretty quickly and with no contest, making her a big part of the team's spacefaring adventures. Vani Gast was the daughter of the Grand Master, one of the Elders of the Universe. She grew up exploring the cosmos by her father's side. Now when her father's title was threatened, she was granted teleportation powers that also had the added benefit of being able to alter people's memories. Vani took up the hero name Voyager and headed to Earth. Now Voyager met up with the Avengers and used her powers to insert herself into their memories as Valerie Vector, a founding member of the team who had bit the dust in the battle against the Squadron Sinister, which had removed her from existence and from everyone's memory. The Avengers' longtime butler, Edwin Jarvis, had collapsed due to an illness shortly before Voyager's arrival, so naturally, when Voyager arrived to the hospital Jarvis had just woken up in, he exposed the truth that Voyager had never actually been an Avenger. While this obviously didn't do her any favors, and she was pretty much booted from the team, she did admit that this was all the plan of her father, while she was actually inspired by the heroes and helped the Avengers to save the day a few times. And last up, the Avengers Unity Squad, first appearing in Uncanny Avengers, was an attempt to try and mend the human-mutant conflict after the events of Avengers vs. X-Men. The idea? To take some X-Men, to take some Avengers, and just put them together. It's kind of surprising that it really hasn't been done before. Now one of the first main recruits, handpicked by Captain America himself in Uncanny Avengers Volume 1 number 1 from 2012, was none other than Anna Marie, aka Rogue. Being a former villain and still mourning the loss of Charles Xavier, Rogue caused quite a bit of friction on this new team. She originally joined in order to keep an eye on the Scarlet Witch, who was also in the team of heroes, and as most of you know, caused quite a devastating blow to the mutant community with M-Day. But as time passed, Rogue became one of the most valuable members of the team, even growing to become its leader. But if we are talking about most powerful, while Rogue was on this team, she managed to absorb all the major Marvel heroes' powers and fought off a Celestial, so I'd say that's pretty darn powerful. There aren't many X-Men members who have only joined the team in the past decade, but for you nerds, I have managed to find some more. First appearing in Extraordinary X-Men number 17 in December of 2016, Lucid, aka Maya Jackson, was a mutant whose powers developed faster compared to most other mutants. By the age of 10, she had the ability to see through solid objects, and she had big aspirations to join up with her heroes, the X-Men. When the M-Pox crisis broke out, however, Maya was visited by Iceman and Magic at her family's home and was offered the chance to move to the safe zone of X-Haven in Limbo. Unfortunately, Maya's mother refused to leave her home, and Maya later fell ill to M-Pox, and her mother fled to X-Haven just a little bit too late. Maya's condition had worsened to the point that not even mutant healers could help her. With Maya on her deathbed, her sister managed to get the current leader of the X-Men, Storm, to meet Maya, and just a few moments before she passed away, Maya was officially made a member of the X-Men under the alias she had created for herself, Lucid. She may not be the most powerful of the characters on this list, but her story is pretty powerful, and I like it. Now this next mutant isn't very new to the X-Men, as he first appeared in New X-Men Volume 2, number 7 in December of 2004, but I actually didn't even know he existed until writing this list. His name is Paris Gavaskar, aka Indra. Indra comes from a region outside of Mumbai, India, and when his mutant power of being able to summon a retractable exoskeleton manifested, he enrolled as a student at the Xavier Institute and moved to the United States. Initially, Paris was placed on Alpha Squadron under the watchful eye of North Star. Paris was one of the few mutants at the Xavier Institute to retain his powers after End Day, and he was one of the young mutants to take part in a sparring exercise to determine the new X-Men roster, despite the fact that he holds pacifist beliefs. He would later move to San Francisco with the other X-Men before being attacked, losing his powers, and then gaining a power boost, being able to produce psionic armor and offensive tools. He would side with Wolverine during the Schism event and relocated to Krakoa in the modern age. Next up, first appearing in X-Men Blue #6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade, which is the coolest name ever, was part of the ruthless mutant vigilantes who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. This group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Now Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. That is super cool, but also kind of terrifying. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue #25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Now this one may be a bit of a controversial pick. Marvel has been doing some interesting things with the character of Kamala Khan recently. Kamala has been a favorite of many Marvel fans as Miss Marvel since her first appearance in 2014. When she first gained her powers, it was due to her being exposed to the Terrigen Mist and undergoing inhuman Terrigenesis. Kamala discovered she was now a polymorph and could change her body into virtually anything. Cool, so she's an Inhuman. She was mega popular and joined a bunch of different teams, including the Avengers. Very recently though, Kamala actually ended up biting the dust in a very high profile and pretty controversial move in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man #26. But then, in X-Men The Hellfire Gala 2023 #1, Miss Marvel was resurrected on the mutant nation of Krakoa. Charles Xavier then explains to Kamala that she was able to be resurrected because of her latent X gene, and that apparently he has known her to be a mutant for quite some time. Xavier explains that she is in fact a mutant and an Inhuman, something that should be impossible because the Terrigen Mists are supposed to take the lives of those who possess an X gene. But because Kamala underwent Terrigenesis, her X gene never actually manifested her powers yet. Now she's running around with the X-Men, admittedly not doing very much. Angelica Jones, also known as Firestar, has the awesome mutant ability of microwave energy manipulation and generation. She uses the Earth's magnetic field and converts it into microwave radiation. She also absorbs microwave radiation from her environment and from stars in the galaxy. She can then focus this energy at targets or to do different things. She can set targets on fire, explode them, and even melt them. She is constantly keeping her powers in check because she has the potential to damage the entire Earth and its atmosphere with her abilities, which is why she is even more powerful in space where she isn't limited by the fragility of the Earth. Now Angelica first appeared in Uncanny X-Men #193 in February of 1985, but crucially she was actually a villain. She was loyal to Emma Frost and her school of mutants and would be on the Hellions, the New Warriors, the Avengers, and the Young Allies before she joined the X-Men in Amazing X-Men Volume 2 #1 in 2013. And she has been on different iterations of the team, even serving as the secret double agent within Orchis during the current Fall of X event. Speaking of the Fall of X, when Orchis made their attack on Krakoa at the most recent Hellfire Gala, it was quite literally just as the new team of X-Men were finally announced. Among that team of mutants was Prodigy, aka David Alain. Growing up, David was always bright and intelligent, but when his mutant powers activated, his intelligence seemed to double and answers became almost instant for him. That's because his mutant ability is to telepathically absorb the knowledge and skills of anyone nearby. die. I wish I had that power. Although he first appeared in 2003, he was first placed on Moonstar's New Mutants training squad and went on to join the New X-Men in 2008, and has been on X-Factor Investigations, New Mutants, the Champions Reinforcement roster, the Young Avengers, the New Mutant Squad, all before finally making it onto the actual premier X-Men team, only to be completely obliterated by Nimrod. Sorry. Now, all the way back in the day, when Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X-gene and abilities were activated following M-Day. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. IJ Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her entire village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope Summers and with the consent of Cyclops, Okonkwo, who took on the name Oya, and the other Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Oya's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and vice versa. Now, Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010, and under the name Tempest, she will be joining a new group of X-Men led by Cyclops later this year, alongside another interesting new X-Man. Although Kane Marco, also known as the Juggernaut, has been around since 1965 and had an on-again, off-again relationship with the X-Men ever since Uncanny X-Men number 425 from June of 2003, when he first joined the team, it never really stuck. He would return to a life of villainy, usually thanks to Sidorak, who isn't really a fan of helping people. Therefore, it is totally valid, in my mind, to say that Juggy only really joined the X-Men for reals in Uncanny X-Men Volume 5, number 16 from 2019. The X-Men were fighting the latest incarnation of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, led by an imposter Magneto. Juggernaut didn't like that he was working for an imposter, so he took down the imposter and decided to join the X-Men. He would be voted on to the newest incarnation of the X-Men at the most recent Hellfire Gala, before almost the entire team was brutally decimated by Orcus. When Marvel relaunches their X-Men titles in the summer of 2024, this year, Juggernaut is on the roster for the main Cyclops-led X-Men team alongside Beast, Magneto, Psylocke, Kid Omega, Temper, and Magic. But speaking of the X-Men relaunch that is happening, we are getting 3 main X-Men titles. There is just the X-Men, which is the team that Juggernaut is on, led by Cyclops, but we will also have the Uncanny X-Men, which is a team led by Rogue, with Wolverine, Gambit, Nightcrawler, and Jubilee, and in Eve Ewing and Carmen Carnero's Exceptional X-Men, Kate Pryde, Shadowcat, will become a mutant teacher again in Chicago, working with Emma Frost, and 3 entirely new young mutants named Bronze, Axo, and Melee. Being so new, and with their book not starting for a few more months, we actually have basically no information on any of these mutants. The only thing I could really find here is another character named Melee, who first appeared in 2007 as part of the Civil War 50 States Initiative, and she doesn't have any information outside of that era of Marvel, and she wasn't even a mutant that we know of. So it seems that this new Melee and her 2 new X-Men newbies are freshly created for the new Exceptional X-Men title, so I'm excited to learn more. But finally, we arrive at Sync. Sync has the mutant ability of power mimicry, meaning, like Rogue, Sync can copy the powers of other mutants. But unlike Rogue, Sync has the benefit of not doing harm to whoever he is borrowing powers from, and he can also do it without physical touch. Recently though, after being resurrected, Sync got a bit of a power boost, and he may even become a new Omega level mutant. In the story, Sync not only uses his normal mutant powers to replicate the abilities of the mutants Sunfire and Cyclops while they were both nearby, but he's also able to tap into Jean Grey's telekinetic abilities while she is on Mars. Sync's growth in power post-resurrection was first noticed back in 2021's X-Men number 18, with Sync documenting that he was now able to sync not just with mutants, but other superhumans as as well, which is quite the boost, and I think it just keeps going up and up and up. In the House of M alternate reality, Synch even got to the point of permanently retaining others' powers, which would be an incredibly significant power boost as well. As a main member of the X-Men though, it's hard to be surprised that he's getting power boosts. Starting off at number 10, we have Forget-Me-Not. I wanted to start this list off really small, with a character y'all may not know. Mainly because almost no one knows him because that's his power. Appearing in 2014, Forget-Me-Not had actually been a member of the X-Men for several years before this, but thanks to his abilities, no one can remember him. Forget-Me-Not's abilities make it so that he is imperceptible in all forms, basically. The power is so good that even Charles Xavier himself had to place a psychic reminder on himself so that he would remember Forget-Me-Not's existence. Clearly that means some of the most powerful telepaths have difficulty discovering him, let alone remembering him. His power is to be forgotten, but the unique ways this power could be used, and the uniqueness of this power in general, will keep him in my mind. Number 9, we got I-Boy. Why is a guy named I-Boy on a list of strongest members of the X-Men? I see you, like many of the other mutants, are very judgmental. Trevor Hawkins' body is covered in eyes, 57 to be exact, which give him an array of powers that honestly, you kinda may expect. Microscopic, telescopic, X-ray, night, infrared, and thermal vision are all a part of his power list. But he can also detect chemicals, is an excellent marksman, and is skilled in nonverbal communication. He can almost read other people's minds by reading their behaviors and body language. He is an incredible tracker. He can predict attacks and can read people's histories just by looking at them. He can pinpoint weak spots in machines and people, is able to see electronic wavelengths and microwaves, is able to see past illusions and disguises as well as magic waves. He makes an amazing detective, in short. On top of all that, he can even pass what he sees onto others, but he has to be physically close enough for it to work. But to top it all off, the craziest and most unexpected power he possesses recently is solar blasts. We don't know how just yet, but Trevor can emit intense bursts of bright yellow energy and focused beams of extrastellar force that cause sunburns and radiation poisoning. Coming in at number 8, it's Gwenpool. I think Gwenpool has one of the strangest powers. That would be the power of medium interaction, which is because she comes from a reality very much like ours, as in superheroes are fictional people in comic books. So, when Gwen was transported to a pocket universe that recreated her home reality, Gwen's perception of the fictional world allowed her to gain the ability to recognize and manipulate the artistic medium that she was now in. She can see and physically interact with lettering and caption boxes, and touch and even break through panel gutters, allowing her to transport objects short distances through space and time by moving them across panels, and she interacts with different instances of herself from multiple panels on the same page. Now I don't know if you've realized this, but this kind of means Gwendolyn Poole can kind of warp reality in a way. She kind of becomes one of the most crazily powerful characters in comics, at least potentially. She first showed up in Howard the Duck Volume 6 number 1 in November of 2015, and she has actually teamed up with many different characters and teams, including being a member of the X-Men on and off again. Number 7, Laura Kinney. I know, she isn't really new as a character, but Laura Kinney, or X-23, has become the all-new Wolverine, and that is relatively new. She officially joined the X-Men as this Wolverine at the Hellfire Gala in 2021. There are a few characters with powers similar to Wolverine, and there are even a few who are clones of Laura herself. But of all these characters, Laura is certainly the best and definitely the most fan-loved. Her powers are very similar to Logan's, with her primary mutant power being an accelerated healing factor. And obviously she also has retractable bone claws, only she has 2 in her forearms and 1 in her foot. Well, each foot. She was obviously a clone and grew up being made to be a weapon, so of course she has an extremely haunted past. But with Logan as a father figure in her life, she grew up under him, and she even did the same for Gabrielle Kinney, another clone who Laura considers to be her younger sister. She's already done so much, but I just kinda can't wait to see what else she does as Wolverine. Number 6! It's Synch. Everett Thomas isn't a new character by any means, being first introduced in 1994, but while he was a part of Generation X, he didn't officially land on the team until this newest iteration of X-Men. He was also one of the first mutants resurrected by the Five on Krakoa, due to the fact that his powers could enable him to act as a substitute for any of the Five who might need to tag out. With that said, what are his powers? Cinch's powers are known as synchronistic power replication. Synch basically produces this really cool funkadelic looking aura that allows him to synchronize with other supers in his vicinity, letting him use their powers unless they leave the vicinity. But what's really interesting is that he doesn't need that person to be completely there. So if you had like a tissue sample from a superpowered person, he could sync with that and it would be enough. Since his resurrection, his powers have been amped up, giving him a limited memory bank of powers he's synced with. He became an official base member of the new X-Men team announced at the Hellfire Gala alongside Laura Kinney in X-Men Volume 5 number 21 in 2022. Number 5. Zorn. Question: what would you do if you and your twin brother developed the mutant ability of having your head become a star? Answer: I honestly don't know how you would still be alive to decide what to do in the first place. Shen Zorn and his twin brother Quan Yin Zorn both developed mutant powers that, in essence, were tiny stars that burned away and replaced their actual heads. They were both isolated, and they both wear super cool looking iron helmets with power dampeners to contain their power from doing too much damage. Shen is called Zorn with a Z, and his head is actually technically a black hole. And to keep things not confusing, Quan Yin is also named Zorn, but with an X. Okay, so what the heck can they do with their powers? Well, both of these characters can produce gravitational electromagnetism, which could actually allow them to heal others and use telepathy, and also, really weirdly, somehow allowed them to sense when people died and speak using shaking gravitational particles. Zorn, the one with a Z, could suck people into his black hole and even turn his black hole back into a sun. They could also both obviously do a lot of damage, using the power of a star to burn, blind, and incinerate people. They both became members of the X-Men at different times. X-Zorn was the first in 2002, but he wasn't always good. And his brother, Z-Zorn, joined more than a few years later. Number 4, it's Dupe. First appearing in X-Force number 116 in 2001, Dupe's origin story is kind of hard to explain, because we don't know for a fact what it is. Captain America tells us he was a US Cold War weapons project, and he apparently had some kind of role in the fall of communism. He was originally a member of X-Force until eventually becoming a member of X-Static. For such an unthreatening character, Dupe is surprisingly strong. He has been described as being an extra-dimensional being with a genius-level intellect, bordering on possible omniscience. And he has a large array of psionic powers, one of which includes controlling Russians. He can change his size and shape at will, allowing him to heal wounds and reassemble parts of his body if they have been removed or cut off. He has an incredible level of super strength and durability as well, with an unknown limit, being able to match and overcome Thor in a fight when he was in a weakened state, taking hits from Mjolnir while he did so. He seems to be able to come back from the afterlife, and he also has a pocket dimension inside himself that he can store things in and summon creatures from. He can also completely break the fourth wall and go across the comic panels. Dupe has defeated the devil all by himself. He is overpowered, and I don't know how anyone loses with him on their team. Coming in at number 3, it's Tempest. Eva Bell first was seen in All New X-Men number 1 in 2012, when we also saw her mutant powers manifest. She was out with friends and a boy when her brother showed up and began to get into a fight with that boy. The stress and duress of the situation caused her powers to pop off, and she completely froze everyone within a city block of her in time for 20 hours until the X-Men showed up, helped her, and then took her in. She's been referred to as near Omega level with her ability of chronokinesis within a time bubble, meaning she can freeze and slow down time and is one of the best at it in the world. She can also speed up time in the bubble by decades if she chooses to, which is why she is a member of the Five, to age up whoever is being resurrected. And she can even time travel. Although she has shown to lose control over this power from time to time, there is no doubt she is and can become more incredibly powerful. Number 2, Elixir. Joshua Foley, otherwise known as Elixir, is a mutant with Omega level healing abilities. He's incredibly powerful, and while originally was just considered a general threat, he can actually use his powers offensively as well, completely ending lives if he wants to. Using his mutant ability of biokinesis, Elixir is capable of controlling the biological structure of his own and other people's bodies down to the genetic level. Now this started off small, but has grown to allow him to simultaneously heal dozens of people, resurrect himself and others, and even the ability to control, manipulate, and absorb the life forces of other living creatures. Offensively, he can use his death touch to harm others, to cause different types of illness, massive swellings, and organ failure. He's even completely destroyed the body of enemies before. He is one of the core members of the Five, as I'm sure no one is surprised about, and he has been a member of the X-Men ever since he was one of the only surviving mutants who retained his powers at the Xavier Institute after M-Day, and he was trained to become one in 2006's New Mutants. Number 1. Hope Summers. Hope Summers was the first mutant born after the events of M-Day, the mutant decimation, or the day that Scarlet Witch cast No More Mutants. She was then taken into the far future and raised by Cable, being carried around in the coolest baby Bjorn you'll ever see. Not too long after, she returned to the present and her mutant powers finally activated. Her power is basically that of Omega level power manipulation. She can manipulate the powers of other mutants nearby to her, even mimicking their powers, but at full capacity and with complete control over those powers. And she can even take on multiple powers at once, but it is pretty tiring for her to do that. A large part of her role in the Krakoan society is as the leader of the Five, who use their abilities to resurrect the mutants of Krakoa. Her role on the Five specifically is both to boost their powers to their full potential and help them work in synergy with each other perfectly. She also helped terraform Mars alongside Vulcan and Proteus, giving them enough power to actually do it. She is such a cool character, and she first appeared back in X-Men Volume 2 number 205 in 2008, but was a child for much of that until she came of age and joined X-Force and the X-Men. Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Banff, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Banff, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure. But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. Tell me that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen. Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine #2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red #1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious. Number 6. Gentle. Although Nezno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick. Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Idie Onkokwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta State when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idie's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010. Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated, and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good. Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X. But it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her Hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding. Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Phantom X as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment, such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will, and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form, although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious, to be honest.
Number 10. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were first introduced in their own comic book series in Dark Avengers issue number 1. Not everyone is a fan of them, because while they're kind of Avengers, they're also kind of go against a lot of the things that the original team stood for. The Dark Avengers are led by Norman Osborn, who gets to make his own organization, Hammer, to safeguard the world's safety following the crumbling of S.H.I.E.L.D. and after his victory against the Skrull Queen, whose death was brought about by Osborn and was also televised, making him a worldwide hero in the eyes of many, despite the fact that, yeah, he was still definitely a villain. Still, although this team was comprised of villains, they did aim to do good things, just in their own way. In truth, they became more a team of anti-heroes than anything, with just a dash of villainous escapades organized by their leader, Osborn, who at this point went by Iron Patriot. Sort of like the Iron Man of this Dark Avengers crew. Number 9. Avengers Academy. Avengers Academy was a series that replaced the Avengers The Initiative series. As that series ended, this one began. The Avengers Academy team was a group of superpowered youths who were selected to be trained as new Avengers. Although originally the teens thought that they had been selected due to the promise that they showed, it was later revealed that they had been selected because of the great risk that they would ultimately become villains. In fact, 6 of the teens were actually working for Norman Osborn during the Dark Avengers Hammer Dark Reign days, and likely could have ended up being trained by him to become Dark Avengers, should that whole situation have continued to play out. However, when the Avengers found out about them, they instead decided to create the Avengers Academy in an attempt to repurpose and redeem those youths, so basically took them in themselves. Hank Pym acted as the headmaster of this academy, while Tigra, Justice, Quicksilver, and Speedball took on roles as teachers. Number 8. Secret Avengers. This team operated for 3 years in the comics. It was led by Commander Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter. After the dissolution of Hammer and the Dark Avengers, Steve was now left to decide what should come after. Instead of reforming S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers, he decided to secure global safety through the use of various smaller Avengers teams. Secret Avengers was one of those teams that he himself led and was a black ops unit used for covertly dealing with the problems that Osborn, Hammer, and the Dark Avengers had left behind and created during their reign. Members included Black Widow, Ant-Man, Beast, Moon Knight, War Machine, Nova, and a Valkyrie named Brunhilde. They were eventually disbanded by Hawkeye following their fight against the Descendants. But man, was it a fun and weird run. Seriously, if you haven't checked out Secret Avengers, you should maybe do it. It's pretty strange. I kinda love it. Number 7. Mighty Avengers. Granted, there is more than one Mighty Avengers team, but for the purpose of this list, we're talking about Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers. This team of Avengers formed to look after the Earth after the main Avengers team was forced to roll out when the Builders threatened the entire universe. Yeah, that was a thing. Remember that? During the Avengers' absence, Thanos returned to Earth and the Mighty Avengers stepped in to protect their people and their planet. The team was led by Luke Cage and included such heroes as Spectrum, White Tiger, and Blue Marvel, as well as Superior Spider-Man, who at one point attempted to overtake leadership of the team, fighting Luke Cage for it. Number 6. AIM. I know what you're thinking, AIM? Wait, but what? AIM was originally the villainous organization of genius-level scientists, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, who aimed, get it, aimed, to overthrow the government and rule the world using technological advancements. So what are you talking about, Amanda? How can they be an Avengers team? Well, this organization eventually was taken over by mutant and hero Sunspot, Roberto da Costa. Sunspot renamed the organization Avengers Idea Mechanics and set out to reclaim and reform it. He used the organization for good, filling it with more noble, brilliant minds who developed tech to help with Sunspot's new Avengers rescue missions. Roberto basically merged his new Avengers team with AIM to create this new technologically advanced Avengers team. Previously, that new Avengers team was actually known as the Multiversal Avengers, and originally they were all about discovering the reason behind the gradual disintegration of the multiverse. Number 5. All New All Different Avengers. This was both its own new team of Avengers in a series as well as being known as the name for kind of an entire Marvelverse soft relaunch, including a variety of spin-offs that took place in 2015, known as the All New All Different verse. This relaunch included a variety of series, including one of my faves, All New Wolverine. But for the purpose of this list, we'll be talking about the All New All Different Avengers founding team and the individual comic series itself that was about them. Following Secret Wars, this All New All Different Avengers team was formed. Originally it was comprised of Iron Man, Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, Miss Marvel aka Kamala Khan, Miles Morales as Spider-Man, young Sam Alexander as Nova, Vision, and Jane Foster's Thor. Iron Man would act as their leader, but this team wouldn't even officially refer to themselves as Avengers until the very end of issue number 3 of their series. This was a refresh on the Avenger team, one that had no tower, no funding, and wasn't officially even recognized yet. Over time they would become more established, but the all new all different team would only exist as it was for 15 issues, up until the events of Civil War II. Number 4. A-Force. The first all-female team of Avengers. It took us over 50 years, but eventually we got there. This team had 2 self-titled comic series, though sadly both were very short. The team was originally led by She-Hulk, and its members would include Captain Marvel, Medusa, Singularity, Dazzler, and Nico Minoru. A-Force originally took their name from the name for the defenders of the matriarchal nation of Arcadia on Battleworld, where She-Hulk reigned as a baroness. The team was created during the Secret Wars event involving Emperor Doom's Battleworld, and would continue to exist up until the events of Civil War II, when She-Hulk was put into a coma. It's kinda how that whole thing starts. Well, it's part of the start anyways. Number 3. The US Avengers. The US Avengers is a strange and eclectic team, but also a fun and patriotic one. They worked alongside S.H.I.E.L.D. but were also considered independent of the organization. This team actually coincided with another Avenger related one that I mentioned earlier, Avengers Idea Mechanics, the new AIM. Sunspot, who was operating under the popular alias of Citizen 5, led and created this team. It was comprised of a quirky yet popular group of heroes, including Robert Maverick's Red Hulk, Cannonball, Tony Ho's Iron Patriot, Squirrel Girl, Pod, and the time-displaced daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones from an alternate future known as Danielle Cage, aka her alternate universe's Captain America. I love Danielle Cage, she's pretty cool. Number 2. Occupy Avengers. I almost said Octopus Avengers. which is not a thing. But maybe it should be a thing, I don't know, they could be a team, they're all octopuses. This series and Avengers spin-off was a small one. It consisted mainly of Hawkeye and followed his adventures on a path for redemption following the events of Civil War II. Let's not forget that it was Hawkeye's arrow that was deemed responsible for the death of Bruce Banner, although Banner had asked that Hawkeye mercy kill him should it be necessary. Although he was acquitted of all murder charges, Hawkeye still felt guilty and sought to make things right. His way of doing this? A more grassroots approach to heroism involving basically a community outreach. Clint focused on more real-world problems that threatened people, like fixing up Santa Rosa, New Mexico's water supply. During the run of Occupy Avengers, Hawkeye would be joined by other heroes such as Red Wolf and Nightshade, who would join him on his quest. Number 1. Savage Avengers. This ruthless team of Avengers is basically one of the newest anti-hero Avenger teams to form, and is more anti-hero than our number 10 spot, the Dark Avengers, because all the members are still definitely the good guys, but are also known for being violent killers as well. This team was formed out of a team-up involving Wolverine and Conan the Barbarian. It consists of Elektra, Dr. Voodoo, formerly known as Brother Voodoo, Elektra, Punisher, and Venom. The team was assembled to combat the combined threat of spellcasters and spell traders from Conan's world and Marvel's main continuity evil secret ninja organization known as The Hand.
In at number 10, Deadpool. With the merger between Disney and Fox, there have been tons of rumors surrounding the members of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and even the Merc with a Mouth coming over to the new Avengers. The most likely is Deadpool. He has a history with the Avengers, and the only thing that Disney executives have to work out is translating the R-rated star into the more family-friendly audience of the MCU. According to online rumors, Deadpool is set to appear in the end credits scene of Black Widow, spoiler alert, and therefore will be joining the new team of Avengers very soon. We are still waiting on Kevin Feige to confirm, but he did note that the movie is happening with a whole new lineup of Avengers, which is pretty exciting. And it's actually even more exciting news that we'll continue to speculate on throughout the rest of this list. In at number 9, Hulkling. Word on the street is that Marvel is casting for Teddy Altman aka Hulkling for an upcoming project that we can only hope is the new Avengers team. Based on a report from Geeks Worldwide, this young Avenger should be joining the cast of WandaVision at some point. The other reason why there is good speculation for Hulkling to be joining the new Avengers in regards to the MCU is the upcoming release of the new Avengers Empire comic. In the comic, Hulkling will lead as the star coming to end the beef between his people, the Kree, and the Skrulls. The fact that this comic book release date is lining up so perfectly with an intro to the MCU means we are hopeful that Teddy will finally get his shot. In at number 8, Songbird. Her real name is Melissa Gold. She was a troubled runaway from an alcoholic father and a mother that was locked in prison. Due to her needing to survive on the streets, Melissa developed a hard edge to her personality that she would later use to her advantage when becoming a professional wrestler, the Screaming Mimi. Her transition to the new Avengers was a bit of a bumpy road to say the least. Under the supervision of John Garrett, Songbird infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. as a double agent. When her cover was finally blown though, she admitted her betrayal and thus became a triple agent after siding with Bobby DaCosta. Still a good member to the new Avengers. In at number 7, Squirrel Girl. Her real name is Doreen Green, and whether you like it or not, she is a valued member of the new Avengers. Moving away from the MCU for a moment, Squirrel Girl undoubtedly has a big fan base and has proved her worth many times. She is a former member of the Great Lakes Avengers, and when Luke Cage and Jessica Jones needed a babysitter, they hired her. I mean, bit of a slap in the face considering all that she has done in the comic books, but hey, she's still considered to be a new Avenger team member. In at number 6, Enigma. Also known as Pod and now Pod 2, Jokinen was an ethnically Finnish Norwegian girl. Due to her proximity of the Pod system armor crash landing, she was bonded to the suit and remained in a cocoon that was later discovered by the Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM for short. At first she quickly defeated the Avengers, but soon she was captured by them before Bobby DaCosta took over AIM. Over time and after some successful missions, Pod would become Sunspot's bodyguard and member of the new Avengers. Dr. Tony Ho, whom Amanda mentioned on the first part, became increasingly fascinated with Pod and even started to fall in love with the person inside of that armor. How sweet. In at number 5, Power Man. His real name is Victor Alvarez, and he was born and raised in the brutal world of Hell's Kitchen, New York City. As a child, Victor's father was a criminal and therefore sent to Seagate Prison as a result. So he didn't exactly have great role models per se, other than his mother that raised him. After the Mighty Avengers were shut down, Power Man along with White Tiger followed each other to join the newly rebranded AIM team, which would in part become the new Avengers. Victor would fight side by side with this team for many adventures, but ultimately he fell felt that he was neglecting his home neighborhood for far too long. So we may not see much of Victor Alvarez in terms of MCU, but he definitely had a great stint with the New Avengers. And maybe he'll come back. Who knows? Just speculation. In at number 4, Wiccan. Billy Kaplan had an interaction with the Avengers at a very early age. While he was dealing with bullies at his school, Billy turned to the Avengers mansion in seek of help. He briefly met his hero, the Scarlet Witch, who told him that he could take care of himself, and boy oh boy did he take care of himself. I mean, Billy chose to stand up to his bully right when his electrokinetic powers started to emerge. With powers like this, he was already set to follow in the footsteps of Doctor Strange, becoming the next Sorcerer Supreme. In the comic books at least, Kaplan and Strange meet when Doctor Strange enters a dimension wherein all past, present, and future sorcerers have gathered. Aside from that, Kaplan was a full-time superhero as part of Roberto's team of New Avengers. In at number 3, Kate Bishop. Much like how Billy Kaplan was following in the footsteps of Doctor Strange, Kate Bishop was the third character in the Marvel comic books to take on the Hawkeye mantle following Clint Barton. Allegedly, she will also be a featured character in the upcoming Disney Plus series Hawkeye, which makes perfect sense if you're priming her character to join the New Avengers. Throughout these series, it's believed that Barton will train Kate Bishop following the events of Endgame. Seeing as though he's become Ronin, this leaves the Hawkeye position wide open. Some have also speculated that Lila Barton will essentially be the new Kate Bishop, but at the end of the day, that's up to Marvel's writing team. In at number 2, Iron Lad. With the introduction of Harley Keener in Iron Man 3 and then a brief appearance at the funeral in Endgame, it's clear that they were warming audiences up for Iron Lad. Especially considering the brave sacrifice that Tony Stark made, the opening for the next Iron Man is available and the only possible prospect to fill in is Harley. Now clearly the comic books are much different than the storyline that the MCU is putting forth, but they rarely do stuff like this for no good reason. So with that in mind and all of the advanced tech that we saw Harley working on as a kid, it's clear to see that Iron Lad will be one of the newest Avengers. Last but not least, on our number 1 spot, Shang-Chi. From the moment Shang was born, he would be raised to become a deadly assassin by his father. Even in his sleep, he would be subjected to alchemy and a virtual reality feed that taught techniques while he slept. Following the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, Captain America and Iron Man were looking at expanding their team to make it bigger and stronger than ever before. This saw the addition of Shang-Chi, who was one of the first picks for this new Avengers initiative. In terms of the MCU, he is already set to star in his own solo film called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Number 10, Ava Ayala. From her introduction in the comics, Ava Ayala was pretty much always involved with the Avengers. She possesses the White Tiger amulet, which grants her her powers. She enrolled in the Avengers Academy and was later declared an official Avengers member during her time with Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers in Volume 2 of the series named after the team, during the Infinity event. Fun fact, if you exclude Doc Ock's Superior Spider-Man, the Mighty Avengers would be considered to be an all-black superhero team. I think that's pretty cool. Number 9, Samuel Guthrie. Young Samuel Guthrie is also known as Nova, though he isn't the first one to take up that mantle. There have actually been many Novas, as Nova is short for Nova Centurion, and Centurion is a rank in the Nova Corps, which is a Xandarian military group who are mostly used in space exploration missions. Sam was the son of Jesse Alexander, who himself was a Nova Centurion. Sam ended up taking up his father's mantle after his father appeared to go missing. Sam would later end up crash landing on Earth and warning the Avengers of the incoming Phoenix Force during the Avengers vs. X-Men event. Siding with Avengers and doing his best to help them in their fight would grant Sam the opportunity to join the team. In Avengers vs. X-Men Volume 1 Issue 12, Thor offered him a membership to the team. While Nova admitted he felt he didn't do much to help, he was honored and accepted, pending his mother's approval of course. Cause you know, Nova's a youngster. He's gotta ask mom. Number 8, Blue Marvel. For those who aren't familiar with Adam Brashear, he is a brilliant engineer and physicist who ended up getting superpowers similar to Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel. He can absorb energy as well, but not quite in the same way. He can only absorb antimatter energy or energy from the negative zone, basically energy not of our world or universe. So he typically does a lot of space fighting as a result, cause it's kinda where he's the most useful. He's also sometimes known for his romantic relationship with Spectrum, aka Monica Rambeau. He wasn't acknowledged as an official member of the Avengers until the self-titled Mighty Avengers series Volume 2 out of 2012. Luke Cage, the team leader, acknowledged him as an Avenger during the Infinity event when he was helping the team. Though we would later find out that Adam had actually been part of a team predating Luke's from the 1970s, also referred to as the Mighty Avengers. But this wouldn't happen till issue 11 of the series, whereas he was welcomed to the team officially in issue 3, in regards to comic book timeline. so it was in the past, but it also happened after. You know, just normal retcons of sprinkling in more flavor. Number 7. Jane Foster. After Thor found he could no longer lift his hammer, Jane began to hear the call from Mjolnir. She had Heimdall take her to it and claim the hammer for herself. She was deemed worthy enough to pick it up and became Thor. Lady Thor, that is. Despite being diagnosed with cancer and finding out that her transformation into Thor wiped away all the progress of her chemo at the time, Jane continued to perform acts of heroism as Thor. Cause she's cool and brave like that. She has joined the Avengers team in a few instances, one being when she joined the Reformed team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series. Number 6. Miles Morales. Miles Morales is the Spider-Man of Earth 1610. He was mentored by Peter Parker of Earth 616 and eventually also ended up joining Earth 616 Avengers as well. He joined the team in the all-new, all-different Avengers series. Miles found himself tangled up with Iron Man and Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, and a ragtag crew of heroes in an attempt to take down the Chitauri warlord known as Warbringer. The team wasn't referring to themselves as the Avengers yet, but of course, as the series is named, that they would later be referred to as the Avengers. You're Avengers now, whether you like it or not. Number 5. Kamala Khan. I was just going to straight up title her as Miss Marvel cause I mean that's who she is to me now, but Carol Danvers as Miss Marvel was part of the Avengers way before what I would consider new, and I didn't want to cause any unnecessary confusion, so much respect to Kamala as Miss Marvel, but for clarity we're just gonna call her by her civilian name here, Kamala Khan. I really love Kamala Khan as an Avenger as well. Kamala also joined up with the Avengers in the all-new, all-different Avengers series, also appearing in issue 1, where we saw Miles and Nova as well. The 3 heroes would actually later leave the Avengers to start their own superhero team known as the Champions. After helping to take down Warbringer, Stark would offer Kamala a place on the Avengers team, which of course she happily accepted. Number 4. Nadia Van Dyne. Nadia Van Dyne was originally just Nadia. She was the daughter of Hank Pym and his first wife, Maria Travoia. How did she end up with Janet Van Dyne's last name? Well, she asked her if she could use it. She felt she knew and admired Van Dyne more than her parents, whom she really had never known. In fact, Nadia was actually kidnapped at a young age and raised in Russia in the Red Room, where she was trained to become a spy, which is why we hadn't heard of her until much later. She eventually escaped her fate as a Red Room agent and decided to seek out her stepmother Janet and her father's teammates, the Avengers, after learning that her father had been killed in the fight against Ultron. Nadia also took up the codename Wasp. Following the events of Civil War II, she ended up joining the Avenger team herself. Janet and the rest of the team ended up warming to her, and Janet revealed that she actually approved of Nadia adopting her mantle. Aw, cute. Number 3. Dr. Tony Ho. After her father died saving Tony Stark's life, Tony resented Stark and strived to be better than him. I just realized this will be confusing because both of these people are named Tony. She studied programming and engineering at Caltech and ended up earning 3 doctorates by the age of 20. Her time with the Avengers began on Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot's team of Avengers, AIM. Da Costa changed the acronym to stand for Avengers Idea Mechanics. She has appeared in the New Avengers comics and eventually left AIM to join the US Avengers and ended up taking up the mantle of Iron Patriot. Tony creates her own armored combat suits similar to Iron Man's, which she refers to as rescue armor. She refers to them as rescue armor probably because they're all non-lethal as well. That's kind of her thing. She's all about non-lethal fighting, keeping things safe. Number 2. Ghost Rider. Robbie Reyes is the Ghost Rider we are talking about this time. He was first introduced in the all-new Ghost Rider and is a car mechanic by day who street races at night in an effort to get money to help him and his brother move out of their rough neighborhood. He ends up possessed by the vengeful spirit of his uncle Eli and becomes Ghost Rider. Eventually, Robbie joins up with the Avengers. You can see him fight alongside the team in the New Avengers comic series out of 2018 to 2019 Volume 8. At one point, he even becomes the heart of an event where he is granted the powers of the other Avengers so that he can eventually go up against and hopefully take on what appears to be the Dark Celestials. Appears to be anyways. I know. What a story, right? He's also just a really sweet older brother. Also, cars. Number 1. Voyager. Vini Gost is the daughter of Grandmaster Endwi Gost. She originally used her powers to infiltrate the Avengers, inserting herself into their memories to make them believe she was a long-lost founding member of the team known as Valerie Vector. Voyager did that for her dad, Endwi Gost, to help him protect his title of Grandmaster, basically to help guarantee a winning wager on a contest he had gambled his title on with her uncle Challenger, who sought to win the bet and usurp her father. he used to be the Grandmaster before. Anyways, it's a lot of history, so we'll skip that. In the end, her true identity was revealed by Jarvis. After being inspired by the Avengers' true heroics, she decided to switch sides, defecting and seeking to help them and Earth instead. In the end, they offered Voyager a membership. Though she declined, she did agree to return to reclaim her membership at a later time. And in the series Avengers No Road Home, she is acknowledged as an Avenger on the character intro page. Number 10. Louise. Louise is not a major character in terms of being a huge mutant or key villain to mutants in the current series, but she is someone who will likely end up becoming a close friend and ally of Wolverine's. She first appeared in issue number 1 of the newest Wolverine series that started in 2020. I actually remember reading that first issue when I was in New York City right before the world went crazy. Oh my, what a time. Memories. Louise is a member of the Night Guard, and while she dropped off after issue 1, as we keep coming back to Dracula and the vampire nations going ons in the Wolverine series, she too has resurfaced. Louise was given a suit by Forge to help slow her transformation into a vampire after she and her Night Guard were attacked and either killed or turned. She once more teamed up with Logan as they went head to head with Dracula and his loyal subjects, and likely she'll be back again as this slow burning story continues to be developed. In fact, I think this is going to be like the big story before the end of this current Wolverine series, whenever we get there. Number 9. Cyclops Lass. So Cyclops Lass might not be one of the most important characters on this list, but I still think she is a character you should get to know because, well, she's just a cool character. I really like Cyclops Lass. Cyclops Lass is Beatrice Buddy Bartholomew and is the leader of the Children of the Atom. By the way, it took me a minute to realize when I first heard of this fan-composed mutant-inspired teen hero team's name that their group name was another phrase used for mutants and even the X-Men back in the day. It's pretty cool when you realize that. Neat stuff. Cyclops Lass appears to have powers similar to the X-Men member and often leader, Cyclops, but in reality we learned that it was actually alien tech which gave her team their powers, allowing them to appear like mutants and like some of their favorite X-Men members. Still, Buddy is a cool character, and while Children of the Atom has ended, I do hope we get to see more of its team members. Buddy made her first cameo appearance in Marvel's Voices issue number 1 and her full appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more mutant lists, please let us know by hitting that like button. It really does help us out at the channel, and it lets us know that you want more X lists, which honestly I like giving you all the X-Men things, so yes, let's do it. Number 8. Cosmar. Cosmar is one of the new mutants, if that makes sense. She first appeared in issue number 9 of the newest series from 2020. Currently there are 2 different groups of new mutants in that series, the one based on the mutant island nation of Krakoa, who are truly feeling those outcast vibes right now, and currently are like the Shadow King's lost mutant kids, and the other traditional New Mutant team who is more focused on space adventures and other international exploits. When Cosmar's powers first manifested, it resulted in the death of her parents. Her powers cause her to suck people into her nightmares, as she creates a reality warping sphere surrounding her. All those who touch or interact with it run the risk of being sucked in. And I believe Forge actually made her a suit as well, as Forge is just making everybody little things to help them with their powers, to help her sort of control those powers so that they wouldn't be so disastrous. Number 7. Gimmick. Gimmick is a new mutant who first appeared and had her powers manifest in Children of the Atom. She was the one member of the team who actually ended up making it to Krakoa due to the fact that she was a real mutant, in addition to also being a major fangirl of the X-Men. But aside from her being a mutant, Carmen Cruz is also good friends with the fellow Children of the Atom, with Cyclops Lass, aka Buddy, probably being her best friend on the team and also her secret crush who she's in love with. Another thing that I love about Carmen is that she also is the person that makes all the costumes on the team, and she's super into cosplay, which I just think is like super cool and super cute. We don't have a lot of characters in the comics that are cosplayers, so I really liked that element. Gimmick's powers appeared initially to be similar to Gambit's, but this was all done using alien technology. In reality, when Carmen's mutant powers manifested, it was revealed that they were shapeshifting in nature and also granted her a healing factor. Carmen made her first cameo appearance in 2020 in Marvel's Voices issue 1, but would appear fully in the first issue of Children of the Atom the following year in 2021. Also, when she did have her Gambit powers, it was pretty cool because she was like throwing basically little like clothing pins, if that makes sense. at people, which I love. Number 6. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are relatively new characters and mutants who appeared within the last year, but we also now potentially have a different version of them in the current X books. They're likely from a different continuity due to what we learned during the Dawn of X period of the current line. There's like a version of them I think that's like 616, and then there's a version of them that doesn't actually have a reality number officially yet, but yes. Maxime and Manon, as we see them in the current timeline, are a brother and sister who together can heavily manipulate and warp the minds of others. Maxime can manipulate the emotions of his target, and Manon can manipulate and alter their memories, making the two a powerful duo when working in tandem. Maxime and Manon once served Ahab, being brainwashed into using their powers to make hounds for him. However, they would later be freed by Jean Grey, and Cable would convince her to look after them. Maxime and Manon are currently relevant because in the New Mutant series, they use their powers to make two humans attack one another and fight to the death, which is against Krakoan law. Woo! However, nothing seems to have come from them taking this extreme action just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes around at some point. Number 5. Bay the Blood Moon. Bay the Blood Moon is an awesome new character who made her first appearance in the Ten of Swords event back in the second main book from the event, Ten of Swords Stasis. She was one of the Arakko mutants who was called to compete in the Otherworld tournament, fighting to represent her nation. However, her fight actually ended up being a marriage. Basically, the Otherworld tournament was gloriously weird because it was being led by Saturnine. So we had traditional sword fights combined with lots of different kinds of battles, including puzzle solving duels, food eating competitions, dance-offs, and even an arranged marriage. However, it also all worked out as Cypher and Bay were seemingly both enamored with the other, as they were both masters of language and communication, but who struggled to understand one another, which fascinated them both, especially Cypher. They were both married and were each awarded a point, as it was considered a shared victory for both sides. Also, the art in the issue of Excalibur where they get married is just so good. It's so great. I love it. Number 4. Chen Zhao. Chen is not a mutant, nor is she an ally to mutant kind. She is just the opposite, their enemy. After coming up against the Marauders, trying to inspire mutant hate in her people as a public figurehead, billionaire, and anti-mutant activist, she ended up allying herself with Hum and his Verendi. Still hell-bent on destroying mutant kind's reputation as heroes, and now especially focused on doing harm to the band of mutant heroes that we know as the Marauders. Chen Zhao made her first appearance back in 2019 in Marauders issue 1, which once again, if you haven't read any of this comic, why not go back and start with that first issue in Chen's first appearance. Currently, Chen is Hominis Verandi's White Bishop, and she's definitely a villain that I think is going to be more prominent and keep getting like more badass, which I love. Number 3. Dolores Ramirez. Dolores Ramirez is another non-mutant, but someone who is a very important character within and around the X-Men universe currently. She is the head of the X-Desk, and no, I don't mean that she worked with Jonathan Hickman to bring our current line of X-books to life. Within Earth 616, she is the one who presides over the United States government X-Desk, which monitors, keeps tabs on, and ultimately kind of spies on the mutant nation of Krakoa and its major players and political stratagems. The X-Desk is a department within the CIA. Dolores once offered to help fellow CIA agent Jeff Bannister, ally of Wolverine, who had been working with him, but he turned her down. Dolores was also one of the lucky few to get an invite to the Hellfire Gala and met with Storm in secret during her first appearance in Marauders issue 11, where she was rewarded for leaking some important information about poisoned medicine to the mutants. So while she's watching them, she also kind of seems pretty friendly. Number 2. Arakko. Arakko is both an island and a mutant, just like Krakoa. In fact, there was a time when both Krakoa and Arakko were joined together, but years ago they were separated. Arakko made their first appearance in Powers of X issue number 4, and later on we learn of all that went on there with the island, including the mutants who inhabited it and their connection to a vastly important mutant, Apocalypse. Following the Ten of Swords event, Arakko attempted to reunite with Krakoa, but both islands decided they were no longer really interested in one another, and the time had basically changed them. They reluctantly rejoined until a more suitable option was found for Arakko and the mutants of Krakoa. In planet-size X-Men, some of the mutants banded together under the direction of Magneto to terraform Mars and move Arakko and its inhabitants, the mutants of Arakko, to the now alive planet. That's what happens when you terraform a planet. planet, you bring it to life again. I actually didn't know that Mars was considered a dead planet until I read Planet-Size X-Men, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm also learning some science facts, which is great. Number 1. Genesis. One of the most badass of all the new characters we've gotten recently in the world of X-Men. Genesis is the long-lost wife of Apocalypse, who also was one of the main leaders of Arakko. She ended up fighting against Annihilation and becoming its new host in order to save her people, uniting both the Amenthi and the mutants of Arakko. Donning the mask, she became a leader of the Amenthi demon army, but also lost a part of herself in the process, as the Annihilation mask possessed and corrupted her. However, during the Ten of Swords tournament, she fought against her husband Apocalypse, who managed to free her from the golden helm of Annihilation, taking it for himself. But Apocalypse's will proved strong enough to resist its influence, and the mask was then transformed by Saturnine into a much less influential and corrupting staff, which was then gifted to Genesis. Genesis made her first full appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 12, but we wouldn't learn that she was Annihilation until much later. Dive into the lesser known corners of mutant lore as we unravel remarkable characters who have graced the pages of X-Men comics but might not yet be on your radar. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. It is me, Amanda McKnight, aka VampX13, but you can call me Vampy. From the incredible abilities of Lifeguard, who honestly, she has some pretty crazy abilities, to the mysterious origins of Ariel. Yeah, not the Little Mermaid. Join us on a journey through the extraordinary tales of these overlooked members who have left their unique imprint on the X-Men universe. I mean, I personally think all mutants have. As we count down the top 10 X-Men members you've never seen before. Share your favorite member of the X-Men in the comments. Number 10. Sway. I am straight up just enamored with Sway. Her abilities are truly remarkable, and the backstory of her origin is both captivating and honestly heart-wrenching. Sway's extraordinary powers first emerged during her teenage years. While preparing for college in New York City, Suzanne and her parents found themselves unwittingly caught in the crossfire of a gang war. Tragically, Suzanne's parents lost their lives in this attack, but miraculously, she somehow survived. Well, thanks to her newfound ability to manipulate time. In a moment of instinct, when her powers first manifested, Suzanne halted the trajectory of the bullets that were aimed at her, saving herself. However, lacking the experience and comprehension and finesse needed, she couldn't extend the same protection to her parents, who of course, as I said, perished. Sway's unique powers grant her control over the flow of time in her immediate vicinity. She possesses the ability to rewind the temporal memory of a location, allowing her to revisit and analyze past events. Utilizing her temporal manipulation abilities, Sway embarked on a mission to track down her parents' assailants, ultimately aiding the police in apprehending the criminals responsible for the tragedy. It was during this revelation of her extraordinary powers to law enforcement that she actually came to the attention of Moira McTaggart and subsequently joined up with the X-Men. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love it when we talk mutants, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. Number 9. Longshot. Longshot, though perceived by some as a mutant, rejects this classification himself. Believed to be a clone and potentially both the father and son somehow of Shatterstar, his existence is entangled in the peculiarities. His existence is entangled in the peculiarities of a Mojoverse-based time loop, a fate shared with Shatterstar and, to some extent, Spiral, and honestly kind of a little bit of Dazzler too, potentially. Despite Longshot being a genetically engineered mutant and clone of Shatterstar, he adamantly denies identifying as a mutant. The X-Men quickly embraced Longshot upon discovering him, and he promptly joined forces with the team in confronting Mojo. Initially grappling with amnesia, Longshot spent a significant portion of his early adventures with the X-Men attempting to reclaim his own lost memories. Number 8. Dupe. Despite Dupe's eccentric nature, his status as a mutant remains unconfirmed. His origin is honestly shrouded in mystery even at this point, leaving room for speculation that he could be a mutant, he could be an alien, or he could even be a being just from another dimension. The lack of explicit verification makes him a peculiar addition to this list, although he clearly isn't the only non-mutant to join the X-Men team, as we just established, though he might just be one of the quirkiest additions, mutant or not. Dupe has engaged in numerous adventures with the X-Men, serving as the receptionist at the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning working for Wolverine. His presence on Krakoa suggests that despite his as of yet still unknown origin, he really is at home among mutants, emphasizing his enigmatic connection to the mutant world, which continues to be really strong. Number 7. Match. While you may be familiar with the Pyros, have you encountered Match? Match, also known as Ben Hamill, debuted in the New Mutants before appearing in the new X-Men series. His abilities revolve around pyrokinesis, granting him mastery over fire, which he can generate and making him immune to fire attacks and heat. Although Match hasn't been prominently featured for a while in the comics, he actually once led the X-Men adjacent team known as the Paragon Squad. He competed for a spot on Emma Frost's X-Men team and has attended both the Xavier Institute and the Jean Grey School of Higher Learning. Number 6. Amanda Sefton. Amanda Sefton, initially known as Jermaine Zardos, the adopted sister of Nightcrawler, a mutant and member of the X-Men, adds a layer of unexpected, complexity to her and Nightcrawler's relationship, as also one of Kurt's significant love interests. Yeah, you heard me right. The complexity begins when, while adopting the alias Amanda, she actually investigates Kurt's actions following their brother Steven's death, which was actually blamed on Kurt. Jermaine assumes the persona of Amanda Sefton during this undercover operation, and it's during this period that Kurt basically develops feelings for her, oblivious to the fact that Amanda is, in fact, his adopted sister Jermaine. Somehow. Known more commonly now as Amanda in the comics, she is a formidable sorceress. Now, while not a mutant, she has proven to be a valuable ally to the X-Men and actually a member of their unofficial Muir Island X-Men team. Number 5. Adam X. Enter Adam X, a noteworthy figure in the convoluted Summers family tree, and trust me, it is. We did a whole bunch of videos on it. It's complicated. As the half-brother of Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan, his lineage is tied to Catherine Summers and the Shi'ar Emperor Dakan Naramani. Although some have debated Adam X being part of the Naramani family tree and have suggested that he is also a son of Corsair and Catherine, basically making him a full Summers, I have actually seen no evidence from the comics to support this theory, so as far as I know, it's still just a theory. Debuting in the 90s, Adam X's origin story echoes the iconic characteristics of pretty much a quintessential 90s character. Abducted as a baby from a genetic lab, he was raised by Jonath, his adoptive father. His mutant abilities emerged, allowing him to internally ignite others' blood, causing intense internal burns. He can also ignite his own blood, inflicting pain, but apparently gaining a speed boost as a result. Eventually, Adam X discovers his hybrid nature, part Shi'ar, part mutant. Sounds pretty 90s to me. Number 4. Ariel. Ariel hails from Coconut Grove, an extraterrestrial planet, and possesses the mutant ability of persuasion. Additionally, her alien physiology grants her teleportation capabilities. Notably, she is connected to another Ariel, her ancestor, who visited Earth and served as the inspiration, apparently, for William Shakespeare's play The Tempest, in terms of Marvel canon. The Ariel in focus here, not her predecessor, arrived on Earth on a mission to gather mutant samples for study, as her people were intrigued by Earth's mutants' evolutionary processes. During her stay on Earth, she became associated with the Fallen Angels and later crossed paths with the X-Men in San Francisco, actually joining them temporarily. Number 3. Lifeguard. Heather Cameron, known as Lifeguard, is a mutant whose abilities activate in response to life-threatening situations, hence her codename, providing her with the necessary skills to save lives, including her own life. Her codename was initially her job title, as she worked as a lifeguard in Australia with her brother Davis. There are implications of her having an unknown Shi'ar heritage, though it was never fully explored. While she made a reappearance in Dawn of X at the Green Lagoon Bar in Krakoa, it would be exciting to witness her take on a more prominent role in the comics due to the uniqueness and utility of her powers. Honestly, she's so powerful, I don't know why she isn't featured more. Probably because she is so powerful, but still. Not enough love. Number 2. Sunpyre. You know Sunfire, but do you know Sunpyre? Sunpyre was Shiro Yoshida's younger sister, Leyu. She also had powers and an attitude similar to her brothers, and first appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue 392 in 2001. For those unfamiliar with Sunfire's abilities, both siblings possess the mutant ability of solar flare, which allows them to absorb solar radiation and convert it into superheated plasma. Using this ability, they could both both covered their body in flame as they became like a flying, human-shaped sun. Sunpyre can use her power to emit plasma blasts and give off intense solar heat. Leyu is one of the mutants who answered a psychic call to help defeat Magneto and save Professor X. After helping out the X-Men in that adventure, she'd later appear as a member of the X-Corps team. Number 1. Petra. Petra has the ability to manipulate rocks and rock formations. In fights, she can bind her opponents or completely destroy them by having the earth move to swallow them, and she can transform rocks into different kinds of weapons and wield them against her opponents. Petra was recruited by Moira McTaggart after being apprehended by the police. Her family died in a rock slide when she was young, which to this day Petra believes she may have accidentally caused. She used her powers to escape and basically became a runaway. Discovering her ability to turn coal into diamonds, she would use those diamonds to pay for a place to sleep, but of course this drew suspicion and she was tracked down by the police. Fortunately, as I said, Moira managed to intercept her and offered her a place as part of her team. Number 10. Cherub. Cherub is another of the Children of the Atom we got to know over the course of their 6-issue series. Cherub is Gabe Brathwaite. His powers, or the alien tech that allows him to appear to have powers, grant him the ability to fly with his winged suit and also allow him to emit sonic blasts. His powers are similar to Banshee and Angels. We also know that he is a fan of Forge and Dazzler, as he also went to go get Forge's autograph and attended a Dazzler concert with his friends and fellow Children of the Atom members. He makes his first appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. Number 9. Dr. James Boggs. Dr. James Boggs made his first appearance in Wolverine issue 11 of the current 2020 series run, volume 7 overall of Wolverine. Dr. James Boggs was a doctor who was recruited by the Vampire Nation to study Wolverine's blood and find a way to use it to eliminate vampires' weaknesses. He began to question the morality of what he was doing, but then he was forced to keep working for Dracula and the Vampire Nation when they transformed his lab assistant into a vampire, and made him one of his test subjects. However, this also inspired Dr. Boggs to betray Dracula, causing him to join forces with Omega Red, who was also coerced into working with Dracula and the Vampire Nation initially, but decided to betray them in order to truly join forces with his new home of Krakoa. In the end, Boggs was killed, but the attack against the Vampire Nation was successful. He will likely be one of the main casualties in what will become an all-out war against the Vampire Nation. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more X-Men lists, yes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Nighty Nightcrawler. So I know that technically everyone still keeps calling him Daycrawler, but Jason Thomas himself insisted he wanted to be renamed Nighty Nightcrawler during his time on the Children of the Atom team. And so I'm going to honor his request. Nighty Nightcrawler it is. Jason is the younger stepbrother of Marvel Guy, aka Benny Thomas, and the two near the end of the series get to have a really touching moment where we learn that Benny really does care about his younger stepbrother, despite seemingly resenting his new family members and dynamic. Nighty Nightcrawler's powers also come from alien tech like most of the rest of the Children of the Atom, and like his name implies, they are similar to Nightcrawler Kurt Wagner's powers, allowing him to teleport and modified to produce Nightcrawler's signature BAMF sound. BAMF! Number 7. Marvel Guy. Marvel Guy is Benny Thomas, stepbrother to Jason and also a member of the Children of the Atom. While Benny is a big Wolverine fan, his powers given to him by alien tech are more comparable to Jean's, hence his name Marvel Guy. However, they are also a lot more restrictive than Jean's power set, which at this point allows her to do just about anything. Also, I don't know if you've noticed, but I also kind of feel like Marvel Guy's costume is a little bit more of an homage towards Wolverine, which I think is pretty cute. Like the other Children of the Atom, Marvel Guy has pieces of an older version of Magneto's helmet built in to protect him against telepaths. And he also possesses gloves which emit pheromones, allowing him to control and influence the minds of others. In most cases, he uses this to put his enemies to sleep, which I think is like the best way you could use those powers without being problematic, to be fair. Number 6. Jeff Bannister. Jeff Bannister is an ally and later friend of Wolverine's and a CIA agent who first appears in Wolverine issue number 1 of the current series and will likely show up again in the series in the future. He teamed up with Wolverine to learn the source of and put a stop to a deadly new drug that had surfaced called the pollen. Together, he and Wolverine track down the Flower Cartel and the Pale Girl, who was initially thought to be a shared hallucination brought on by the drug, though we'd later learn that she was actually a real person. Jeff Bannister also has a daughter who suffered from cancer. After Bannister worked with and befriended Wolverine, Logan was actually able to help his daughter by getting her immediate access to Krakoan medicines, which helped to cure her. Logan also gifted Bannister a Krakoan gate following their adventure together. Number 5. Pale Girl. While the Pale Girl might be a new character who hasn't appeared too much just yet, her role in the Wolverine story arc in which she appeared was pretty important, and the revelation about her character and just who she was also pretty important, and will likely lead to a huge ramification later on in the world of X-Men. As I said before, the Pale Girl was initially thought to be some kind of shared hallucination for those who use the pollen, until she was caught on camera. We'd later learn that the Pale Girl was actually a mutant, Meredith Milley. Meredith Milley was a secret dealer of the pollen and the one who was responsible for delivering shipments to the Order of the X from the Flower Cartel, which seemed to be Russian in origin and tied to mutants working for Russia. The Pale Girl was the missing piece to this puzzle and was also revealed to be a powerful mutant who, while appearing ghostly, could also take control of the minds of her victims, bending them to her will. Number 4. Death. Death is one of the children of Apocalypse and his wife Genesis. He is one of the original 4 Horsemen members, which also adds an extra dimension to the fact that Apocalypse generally is referred to any of his 4 Horsemen groups formed thereafter as his children. Although I guess he also kind of thinks of all mutants as his children, so there is that too. But Death is his actual and biological child. One of, anyways. Death ended up being the chosen champion for the Arakko tournament. He fought against Storm and was defeated. Their battle and just the focus on Storm and all of her struggles up till this point during it was amazing, and I wouldn't be surprised, as Death and Storm both also had a few flirty moments together, if we didn't see the two of them end up face to face again. I should also mention that Storm won her fight against Death while also being temporarily depowered. Yeah, because Storm is a badass. You can check out that fight in 2019's X-Force issue number 14. Recently, Death showed up in the current Wolverine series where he was approached by Logan and his vampire hunter friend, Louise, and asked to help them in their fight against Dracula and the Vampire Nation, to which he agreed. And if you're wondering, wait a minute, didn't he die at the end of the Ten of Swords tournament? He was like kind of torn apart? He didn't. He turns up in Sevalith later and he's alive. Don't worry about it, it's comics. I don't know if he's a vampire or he's just death so he can't die. I don't know. Number 3. Psylocke's daughter. Psylocke's daughter doesn't have a name just yet, but is a character that was hugely focused on in the Fallen Angel series. If you are a Psylocke fan and you wanted a Quantum-focused series, I highly recommend you check out that series. Psylocke teams up in the series with X-23 and young Cable in an attempt to find out and rescue her daughter. In the end, Mr. Sinister is the one who ends up in possession of the child, who now leads a cybernetic existence within Apoth's remains, and uses her safety as a leverage in order to motivate Quantum to work for him as the leader of his Hellions team. While her daughter might not have a name yet, at least I don't think we've seen her with one, she was featured in an illusion created by Mastermind that Psylocke was trapped in issue 10 of Hellions. Another book that is a current recommended read for my Psylocke fans out there. And hopefully her daughter will get to come back and we'll get to see more of her. I think that could be cool. Number 2. Iska the Unbeaten. Iska is the sister-in-law to Apocalypse, being the sister of his wife Genesis. Her mutant ability is probably one of the coolest out there, along with Domino's luck ability. Iska's power is that she can never lose. She was one of the chosen champions of Arakko who competed in the Otherworld tournament in Ten of Swords, and of course won against her competitor, surprise surprise, the current Captain Britain, Betsy Braddock. Her powers, however, seemingly forced her to change sides in the war between the mutant nation of Arakko and Annihilation's Amenthi demons. She abandoned the mutants of Arakko, joining up with the Amenthi due to the fact that the mutants had become the losing side, and her power prevented her from ever losing. So a little bit into her history there. I like Iska a lot. Number 1. Horticulture. Horticulture is probably one of my favorite new villain teams and groups of characters we've seen thus far in the current line. And they also were someone that could probably threaten the entire Earth, so they might become like huge supervillains in the future. They are a team of elderly women who are scientists, specifically working in the field of botany with plants. I don't know why I said with plants, that's kind of redundant, but you know what I mean. Botany, plants, those are things. Their goal is to eliminate a large chunk of the human population in an effort to return the Earth to a more natural and pristine state. Their leader is Augusta, and members include Lily, Edith, and Opal. It is possible there could be more members of Horticulture as well. These are just the 4 women that we are familiar with based on the 2019 X-Men series and Empire Limited series, where they appeared as enemies, and for a short time during Empire reluctant allies. We've also learned through the Avengers side of things that Harrower, Augusta's great niece, was a former member of the team who split off to do her own thing. Horticulture first made their appearance in volume number 5 of the X-Men in issue number 3. That's the 2019 X-Men series, not the 2021 one, which is the current one.
First, let's talk about Swordsman. The Swordsman is one of the most badass and underrated villains to ever join the Avengers. The story of how the Swordsman joined the team is so crazy because the dude basically bullied his way onto the team. You see, the Swordsman already had an extensive resume as a villain before he decided he wanted to become an Avenger, and he didn't really do it because he was remorseful for his past actions or anything like that. In fact, he only wanted to join the team because he was secretly in cahoots with the Mandarin and was set on infiltrating the team. But instead of pretending to be nice and putting on a sorry face, he actually just did what he does best, throwing down with the Avengers and beating up everybody, even threatening to throw Cap over the edge of the building, basically bullying the Avengers into letting him join. That's right, this dude strong-armed his way onto the Avengers team. Now it's surprising that nobody really knows about the Swordsman because he's just truly badass, but once he joined the team, however, his intentions changed and he finally did have that change of heart after realizing that the Avengers are actually pretty decent. So instead of committing to the betrayal of the Avengers, he just hightailed it out of there. Now fast forward 8 years and guess who's back on the scene? The Swordsman, now with a legit invitation to join the Earth's mightiest heroes. If there's any villain who earned his spot on the team, it's definitely this guy. Next, let's talk about Sabretooth, who's well known as one of the most brutally animalistic villains to have ever walked the Earth. But all of that changed thanks to the Axis event, a spell which flipped the moralities of heroes and villains. Now, Sabretooth had joined the heroes' ranks before, but this was the very first time he did so with genuine intentions of doing good, embracing a heroic role and aligning himself with the Avengers' cause. Now, unlike most villains who went back to their usual ways once the spell was over, the morality inverting effects actually didn't fade away for Sabretooth. He continued as a changed character, now an integral part of the Avengers Unity division. Unfortunately though, his heroic nature wouldn't last forever, as he became evil once again after sacrificing himself to revive his son. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. Next up is Dr. Octopus. There have been a slew of villains who have joined the Avengers under the guise of a hero while secretly harboring evil intentions, but Dr. Otto Octavius stands out as one of the very few villains who genuinely wanted to do some good as a hero, joining the Avengers while he was secretly in control of Spider-Man's body during the whole Superior Spider-Man arc. Now, while he did try his best at being a better Spider-Man than Peter Parker ever was, deep down, at the end of the day, he was still the arrogant and rage-filled Doc Ock, and so he tended to take things way too far, like that time he straight up punched the Scorpion's jaw clean off, or his tendency to not really care about ending the lives of his villains to keep them down. This Spider-Man was a much more lethal version than most we've ever seen. Now, Doc Ock's stint as Spidey didn't last forever, however, as a sliver of Peter's consciousness still resided in his mind and fought desperately to take his body back. Eventually, after a humbling moment where he realized he wasn't a better Spider-Man, he sacrificed himself so that Peter Parker could return. Next is Vernaki. The new Avengers run was most notable for revealing that many of the Avengers superheroes had been secretly replaced by shape-shifting Skrulls for basically the entire time. It was during the Secret Invasion arc that it was revealed that the literal queen of the Skrulls herself had been secretly impersonating Spider-Woman for years. This meant that a Skrull had been the founding member of the New Avengers, serving as a double agent against Hydra, and even siding with the government-sanctioned Avengers during Civil War so that she could get closer to Tony Stark. The revelation of her true identity was a jaw-dropper, marking the climax of Secret Invasion. Now, despite the fact that she had been heroic for the most part, she was eventually ended by Norman Osborn, who's definitely not known for his subtlety, putting an end to the Skrull Queen's masquerade with a bullet through the brain, concluding her chapter in Avengers history. Next up is Magneto. While nowadays Magneto is considered more of an anti-hero than a straight up bad guy, his villainous roots definitely run deep. He's fought against the X-Men probably about as many times as he's joined them, give or take a few. But it's not very often that you see him teaming up with the Avengers, however, given his mutant superiority complex and how he detests humans. His stint as an Avenger happened during the whole Axis event that I mentioned earlier, the huge spell that flipped the moralities of many characters, turning bad guys good and vice versa. Now, feeling all good and moral, Magneto became one of the founding members of the Astonishing Avengers in a bid to stop the Red Skull. Putting aside his hate for humans, Magneto teamed up with Steve Rogers and even Thor as they would go on to tackle the rest of the Avengers and X-Men who had turned evil as part of the spell. However, after the spell was reversed, Magneto went back to being a human hater. Next is Wonder Man. Wonder Man is the original Avengers villain turned hero. Gifted with extraordinary powers by the notorious Masters of Evil, Simon Williams was trained for a mission specifically to infiltrate the Avengers, becoming the Masters of Evil's inside man. At first, Wonder Man's initial allegiance was, of course, to his villainous mentors. However, a moral dilemma sparked an internal conflict within him. In a surprising turn of events, he chose to betray the Masters of Evil, aligning himself with the Avengers fully to thwart the Masters of Evil's sinister plans. While this twist of fate secured the Avengers' victory, it ended up costing Wonder Man his life, as in a heroic act of self-sacrifice, he went down fighting for the greater good. Now, thankfully, however, Wonder Man's story doesn't end there, because, like most characters in comic book history, Wonder Man just couldn't stay dead, and he later returned to the land of the living, retaining his moral allegiance to the Avengers. From a villainous pawn to a fully fledged Avenger, at number 4 is Moondragon. Now, many would consider Moondragon to be a morally ambiguous character as opposed to an outright villain, but I mean, come on, her very first appearance had her take on the name Madame MacEvil, for crying out loud. She was known for orchestrating villainous plots like, for example, hijacking Iron Man's armor and forcing him to fight against Namor in battle just so she could see who was stronger. Now, on the other hand, she was responsible for giving many superpowered beings their powers so that they could fight against Thanos, but everyone she helped create ended up becoming supervillains anyway, so yeah, pretty ambiguous. Now, surprisingly, Moondragon got a shot at redemption and joined the Avengers on a probationary basis. In the Celestial Madonna saga, she joined the Avengers alongside heroes like Beast and Mantis. But she wasn't too comfortable there, and she eventually bailed before officially becoming Avenger, which was actually a relief for many of the superheroes on the team. Unlike some reformed baddies who stuck around for a while, Moondragon's run with the team didn't even last 20 issues, after which she went off to mentor Hellcat. Next up is Avenger X, the only villain on this list who actually started as a hero, but her deep secret about the insidious natures of her powers led her to eventually betray the team. During the days of Cap's kooky quartet, the Avengers welcomed Avenger X, an obscure member with a unique power, amplifying her teammates' abilities, which everybody thought was great. A support character on the Avengers that gives everybody a free boost? Well, not so fast, because this power comes with a catch. In order to fuel her teammates, she had to secretly drain the life force from others. Now, initially, she had the best of intentions as she genuinely believed she was making her team stronger. However, as the days went by, her methods took a dark turn. Fearing that her secret draining powers might get out, she began sowing the seeds of internal dissent among the Avengers, attempting to turn the Avengers against each other. The climax unfolded in a dramatic showdown against the quartet, where Avenger X became dangerously close to triumph. However, the original Avengers made a surprise return, teaming up with their successors to take down the now villainous Avenger X. At number 2 is Quicksilver, son of Magneto and member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, though it was later revealed that the Maximoffs were actually given their powers by the High Evolutionary in his mission to speed up human evolution, but that's besides the point. Anyways, Pietro and his sister Wanda had a change of heart when he realized that he and his sister were pawns for their father, just tools of destruction against the X-Men. From that point on, they ditched the villain gig, opting for a life where they could use their powers for themselves and nobody else. When the Avengers had a hiring spree, Quicksilver saw an opportunity. Convincing his sister, the duo joined the Avengers, making up half of the second roster. Skipping out on settling scores with the X-Men, Pietro and Scarlet Witch proved their mettle in battle, even though this Avengers roster was initially looked down upon and dubbed Cap's Kooky Quartet. Although Quicksilver's stint with the Avengers was short-lived, he left a mark showcasing his superhero side. And at number 1 is Vision, who started off as a synthetic villain who had a heart of gold. Vision, the android initially designed by Ultron to be the Avengers' worst nightmare. However, if it were not for Ultron deciding to use the brainwaves of Simon Williams in Vision's programming, because if you guys recall, Simon Williams is actually the Wonder Man from earlier in this list, someone who's known for flipping sides in Avengers infiltration missions. And that seemed to be Ultron's fatal flaw, and so during the epic showdown between Ultron and the Avengers, Vision was unleashed to take down our beloved heroes. However, this metallic marvel had a change of heart. While initially following Ultron's orders, Vision couldn't ignore his moral compass embedded within his artificial being. And in a turn of events, Vision turned the tables on his creator, breaking free from Ultron's control. This newfound independence led Vision to switch sides, aligning himself with the Avengers to take Ultron down. And lo and behold, the Avengers welcomed him with open arms because, well, I mean, of course they did. He's the most powerful synthezoid to ever walk the earth. So from that moment on, Vision became a long-standing member, contributing to countless victories against countless adversaries.